speaker.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine. We're convening at 5 p.m. on June 10th, 2026 in the Council Chambers at the Municipal Administration Center. Roll call this evening, Deputy Mayor Hinchberger.
Present.
Councillor Blackwell.
Present.
Councillor Kavanagh.
Present.
Councillor Monroe.
Present.
Councillor Prenger.
Present.
Councillor Steinhoff-Gray.
Present.
Councillor Stewart.
Present.
Councillor Williams.
Present.
Councillor Kavanagh, please.
Thank you very much. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we're meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewa of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewa of Saugeen First Nation, whose ancestors were the first to inhabit, care for, and live on this land. We recognize and appreciate the contributions of Indigenous peoples that they have made, both in caring for this land and shaping and strengthening this community, our province, and our country. As a public service organization, we are dedicated to learning and acknowledging Indigenous history and culture and are committed to actions that move us on a journey towards truth, healing, and reconciliation with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the Métis Nation of Ontario, and the historic Saugeen Métis.
Are there any proposed amendments, additions, or deletions to or from the agenda this evening from council members? I'd like to remind any council members to disclose any pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof, either now or as it arises during the meeting. And we need a mover and seconder that the minutes of the council meeting held May 27, 2026 be adopted as printed, moved by Councillors Stewart and Monroe. Any discussion? All in favor? That's all in favor? That's carried. Welcome to it, Jason. You never know, so you got to pay attention. All right, we have a very exciting presentation this evening. I'll just wander out to the public gallery. Check, check. There we go. All right, so this is the time of year for science fairs, and Team Blue Water represented Grey and Bruce Schools at the 2026 Canada-wide Science Fair in Edmonton from May 23rd to the 30th this year. And about 400 students competed for nearly $2 million in prizes, scholarships, and scientific opportunities. And 4 members of Team Blue Water where I Canadian finalists and represented Kincardine. And I'd like to welcome these 4 young people up. I'll call your name out and you can come up and accept your award here as we recognize national finalists and champions in all sorts of endeavors. So I'd like to welcome Tristan Traynor to come forward to receive an award. And perhaps Anirudh can come as well. They worked as a team, a group project. They won a group award in the special award category, the Aegis Resilient Communities Award for their Been There, B-I-N, Been There, Sorted That, a recycle waste sorter using AI project. So congratulations to both you, Anirudh and Tristan, for your great work. We also have two other Kincardine students who were finalists, and I'd like to welcome Olivia Andrusiak to come forward, as well as Jade Lowry. Now, Olivia did a project called Decomposing the Secrets of Plastic, and Olivia is from St. Anthony's Catholic School in Kincardine. Would you like to be a dental hygienist when you graduate, when you get a career? Maybe you never know. So I read what she was doing, and it's like, it is saliva pH and enamel remineralization, exploring a potential contributor to gender differences in dental caries, which are like cavities, right?
We like to think of it as neutral, but it's actually more acidic if you are female, but we don't really contribute that yet.
So we like to celebrate the recognition. We took the pictures earlier just to speed up the process, but congratulations so much. Your parents and family are really proud, as is Kincardine, of the great work you've done in representing our community. Thank you so much. Yep, I already told them that they can go. It's not being rude or anything. Lots of people come and then they just wander out. So you're not going to bother me. You can come or go whenever you want. So.
We don't like pepperoni on our pizza.
No. All right, so we're going to move on in our agenda at this point. And we have with us Roxana Bauman, our Director of Corporate Services, and Andrew Mirabella. And we need a mover and seconder that council authorize an amendment to bylaw number 2021-114, being a bylaw to establish development charges for the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine, to repeal the expiry date of June 30th, 2026, which will extend the life of the current bylaw to July 2nd, 2031 per the Development Charges Act, and further that staff be directed to bring back a report to council on the progress towards a new background study in Q1 2027. So this is about extending the expiry date. Moved by councillors Stewart and Steinoff Gray. Director, please.
So through you, Mayor. So this report is requesting council approval to amend the existing development charges bylaw, which was set in 2021 and currently expires June 30th, 2026. Since this bylaw came into effect, the province amended the Development Charges Act and allows municipalities to extend our bylaws from 5 years to 10 years. Council will recall that our 2026 budget had funds in the budget to work on updating this bylaw and the background study. However, there are several reasons why staff are recommending the extension. The first being that there is additional time required in order to refine long-term capital forecasts, particularly relating to recreation and community infrastructure projects. You'll be hearing about one of those projects or two of those projects this evening, but we simply didn't have the information available to include it in the study at the time that we were working on it, and at the time to be able to have the new bylaw in effect for July 1st. And so updating the study too early will cause a risk of understating future growth-related infrastructure costs. In addition to that, and at the time of writing this report, there was information that there was a provincial funding program coming forward for development charges, which of course is now the next report on the agenda. However, that was not known at the time of when we were making this recommendation. But there was a significant housing enabling infrastructure funding program announced, and because at the time there was a lot of uncertainty as to what would this look like, that was just another reason as to why we needed to just press pause on putting forward a new updated bylaw. And then also with respect to timing and the municipal election, deferring the work allows for the next phase of consultation and policy discussion to occur outside of the election cycle. So there was $38,000 in the budget to work on this, and there have been some costs incurred thus far, $22,500 roughly for the work to date. However, none of this will be wasted because we will be able to continue and pick up on where we left off in the new year. So the recommendation is to amend the bylaw to remove the 5-year expiry, and then it will automatically extend the life of the current bylaw by another 5 years to July 2nd, 2031. But at the same time, staff would not do nothing. We would be working on this in Q1 of 2027 to bring back information to the new council.
Questions from council members? Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, through your chair. It was a bit of a surprise to me to read the agenda for this week, because one of the things I was really looking forward to in the 2026 budget and business planning was addressing the subject of development charges. I've got a kind of a hypothetical question. It sounds like the options available to us are to extend or to allow to expire. Does the Development Charges Act allow you to extend part of the bylaw?
So I don't think so, but thankfully I have Andrew Mirabella on the line from Hemson Consulting to answer any questions that I could not answer.
And Ms. Mayor Craig, thank you for being with us tonight. You heard the Deputy Mayor's question.
Could I fine tune the question for him?
Go ahead.
Okay, so it's probably not a surprise to some on the table and several people in the community that I have some fundamental issues with development charges. One is I like the concept that growth pays for growth, but it's based on an assumption that that growth is only going to present demands to the community and not actually provide benefits. The scenario I'm imagining is geographical. I've a strong proponent of community improvement plan funding for core commercial areas in Kincardine and Tiverton. I think that most people around the table would say that the level of funding that we've allotted for that, while it's had some effect related to a new apartment building that's going to be built, that it probably isn't enough. I have this general feeling that and according to our official plan, the downtown is the cultural and an institutional center of the communities. And I look at that and I think that's something that everybody benefits from, and therefore, in some ways, everybody should contribute to in order to see it grow. So my question is specific about when I say to extend parts of it or allow to expire parts of it, the scenario I'm imagining is you extend your expiry date on your bylaw for all the geographical areas that exist currently, with the exception of the core commercial areas within Kincardine and Tiverton. The reason, I'll let him answer.
Andrew, please.
Sorry, and through the mayor, is the question then to amend one of the exemptions within your bylaw for the? Is there an exemption in your core commercial area? I have to pull up the bylaw, but is that or I'm just trying to figure out what the intention here is. It to exempt development in the commercial area or to make them pay more DCs?
Thank you, through your chair. It would be exempt. I don't believe currently, I haven't read it lately, but I'm pretty sure we do not exempt core commercial areas from development charges. And I know that some municipalities actually do exempt certain areas of their community from development charges.
So perhaps if, with your concurrence, Deputy Mayor, let's not be specific about exactly what we're trying to achieve. Is there an ability to extend the expiry date while at the same time making amendments to the development charge bylaw to craft it in a way that maybe suits our community better according to the changing environment, so to speak? Is there opportunity to extend and amend at the same time, or is that a different question? Is that kind of the intent, broadly speaking? Broadly. Okay.
Yeah.
With this specific example that the Deputy Mayor provided.
So with the recent changes to the legislation, the municipality can go through a streamlined process to amend their bylaw if the only intention of the amendment is to, one of them being the extension of your bylaw, two being the adjustment or removal of your index, so your inflation adjustment within your DC rates, and the third being if you're going to reduce the DCs that are payable for one or more types of developments. So we would have to explore exactly the situation that the deputy mayor is looking at, and we can look at potentially bringing something back that has an amendment to the exemption clauses that would reduce the rate. But we'd have to take that back with staff, review the merits of it, and if it actually falls under that clause of the act.
So that kind of ties into the question I was going to direct to our director, actually, and the recommendation says that staff be directed to bring back a report to council on the progress towards, we're extending the expiry date to 2031. Does that mean that's when it's actually going to expire, or can it expire? Can we create a new DC charge bylaw in Q2 of 2027?
So through you, like, you're just removing the fact that it states, our old bylaw is stating that it expires. So if you just remove it, it will technically expire in 2031, but that doesn't mean that we have to wait that long. And that's why the second part of the resolution was that we were going to bring something forward in 2027 to have it enacted July 1st, 2027.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. I'm kind of through you piggybacking on some of those questions. So one of the things that I'm curious about is a different exemption, but knowing that there's a potential opportunity to exempt or to add exemptions, my feeling right now is that we would approve extending it, and then there's nothing preventing us in 3 months from adding an exemption if we wanted to.
I believe that would be possible, but again, I would prefer to defer to Andrew on this question.
So again, through the mayor, so the report and the amending bylaw today is just about the extension, but because of the changes to the legislation, if there is an appetite to reduce the DCs, that's the only effect of the amending bylaw. That could be done separate from a formal background study. But I do caution, we just have to make sure that whatever clauses that are being reviewed fits in the context of that act. So I just want to, we'd have to take back whatever is being put forward and review that with staff and review that with the DCA. And also caution about making too many ad hoc adjustments when a new bylaw is intended to come forward in early 2027. That will be the full scope of your DC update.
So once again, just to remind council, Andrew and the director have been reminding us this is just about the extension of the expiry date. And I think we have already heard, it's been confirmed that we can make amendments to it, some of which could likely happen in, we could start the direction this term of council. So those are options, but we'll, okay, Councillor, I'm going to go to Councillor Stewart. I'll come back to you.
Thank you. I think you remember that we did an exception when we did Tiverton. Now, it's not black and white, but it does give us some freedom to do things even if we have an existing. I'm aligned with the mayor. We need to extend this because there's so many things going on, and a few of you were attended the Mount Forest sort of type of new development. And the new laws and everything that the province has passed on is that development fees are no longer at time of building permits. The development fees for that particular project are $900,000. But we don't actually start collecting anything until occupancy costs, which could be 2 years out. And you only collect the 6 of it. So basically it takes you 6 years now to do it. So it's an interesting thing. So I think just getting back and trying to tie it, we need that time right now to really take a look and allow the staff to really take a look. And if we need to bring exceptions or exemptions, we need to talk about that. And so extending it right now seems to be the prudent thing to do. Thank you.
Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you. Through you, you mentioned bringing back a report on the progress. Is that something we're expecting to see in this term, or would that be for next term when you're looking to bring back the bylaw?
So through you, no, we wouldn't start like picking this work up again until the first quarter of 2027. So that would be the timeline. There wouldn't be a report coming forward to this council anymore.
So the motion before us tonight that we authorize repeal the expiry date and extend it to July 2nd, 2031, and further staff be directed to bring back a report Q1 2027. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Development Charge Reduction Program. Once again, we have Director Bauman and our consultant online from Hemson Consulting. We need a mover and seconder that council receive this report for information, and further no application be submitted to the Development Charge Reduction Program at this time. Moved by Councillor Stewart, second by Councillor Blackwell. Director?
Okay, so through you. So this is the DCRP, Development Charge Reduction Program funding program that was announced just about a week ago. This report provides an overview of some of the eligibility requirements. So while, actually, I might as well just go through the slides just quickly so that you can all see just to provide an overview of the program. So applicants must commit to reducing development charge rates by between a minimum of 30% to 50% for all residential development types as of March 30th, 2026 for a period of 3 years. And so there's certain projects that are eligible and they must meet the following outcomes, and that is to primarily enable the construction of new housing units and to accelerate shovel-ready infrastructure projects that are currently in your existing development charge study and capital plan. And of course, funding intake is competitive and is not guaranteed. And the provincial and federal government will fund up to 90% of eligible project costs, and the municipality would fund 10%, plus any ineligible portions of those construction costs. And the application deadline in this case it's a very tight turnaround, June 19th. Only today was the application itself posted in the portal for viewing. So it is a very short timeline. So I apologize if the report wasn't thorough enough. There were quite a few questions after the fact, and so I did provide some additional information in terms of reviewing all of the projects that were in our existing development charges study to determine which ones would be eligible under what we were able to see in the guidelines and in the framework. I'll go over some of what that is, but staff, at the bottom line is staff did not feel that there was any projects that were suitable or eligible for this particular program. So, sorry, let me just switch that. Okay, so for eligibility, so housing enabling infrastructure projects will be prioritized, and these are projects that support creation of new housing units. Community infrastructure projects that support development of complete communities will be considered. Projects should have a financial plan in place to operate the asset and should not be dependent on or seek senior level government support. And projects cannot have started construction at the time of application or at the time of agreement execution. And rehabilitation projects that extend the life or repair of existing infrastructure are not eligible. Some of the application requirements, you need to provide a description of the DC rate reduction. So, and the applications will be prioritized based on the depth of the rate reduction. So if you have a 50% rate reduction, your application will have a stronger chance than a municipality that only commits to a 30% reduction. You need to provide, this is when I went through the actual application form itself, what were the questions that were being asked. So provide details that are used to arrive at the estimates of new housing units that benefit from the DC relief over a 3-year period. To provide the number of estimated net new housing units added due to the development charge relief. They were going to ask you to explain shovel readiness, so whether there's an EA or land acquisition or engineering. To identify total project costs and all of the sources of funding as originally planned without the DCRP funding, and a commitment to fund at least 10% of eligible municipal infrastructure projects. So with this funding piece, like you have to have had it already identified in your capital plan, which is why you would be able to easily identify the funding sources. So another thing that you're supposed to submit with the application, you need to submit the actual development charge bylaw, which shows the rates that were actually in effect as of March 30th, 2026. And you specifically have to highlight in the background study which pages and where the project is listed. The study must show the project as beginning before July 31st, 2030, and any costs that are reflected as a benefit to existing or post-period capacity, they are not eligible, so they would be factored into the costs that the municipality has to pay, and they don't count towards that 10% contribution. And you have to highlight on the capital budget on which page the project is listed. And there's some additional documents that you have to provide, like maps and reserve fund information or tender contract award information to demonstrate that the project is shovel-ready. So, in summary, in order to submit an application, council has to make that commitment in advance of what the reduction would be over the 3-year period. So just to provide some context, so our development charges for a single and semi-dwelling is $26,760. So I just threw in there, like, what would the range be of a reduction between 30 to 50%? So it would be $13,380 to $18,732. So currently, if we look at a 3-year average, our annual residential development charge revenues are $660,000 a year. So our estimated net loss of revenues would be between $200,000 and $330,000 a year. So over a 3-year period, it would be anywhere between $600,000 and $900 million. So, like, in theory, if we did have eligible projects, we should really be looking at making sure that any kind of funding that we received under this grant would have to exceed, obviously, the development charge revenue loss that we're forecasting. So, in summary, staff reviewed the background study and did not identify any suitable projects that met this criteria, and therefore are recommending not to submit an application.
Actually, I'm going to start. So I'm a couple of things. I'm disappointed that the time span is like 9 days. Like, it's just ridiculous. And it's not that our staff couldn't do the work, because I'm sure you're very capable. There might be some overtime involved in that. Could be done, but there's 2 other things. There's the reality that you've assessed and discovered that there aren't those projects ready to go, which on one side maybe eliminates us from the process, but having said that, it's unfortunate that there weren't those projects ready to go, which eliminates us from that process. So it is, like, I just wish there was stuff that we had been in a spot that we could have done it, but it comes down to we don't have the projects ready to go that could utilize this funding. That's like the director's assessment, and just out of curiosity, was that with the assistance of Mr. Mirabella as well, or he wasn't involved in that one? Okay, all right. Council questions. Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. It's not a bad program. It's just not made for us, and we just can't take advantage of it. I wish it was around 5 years ago. We could have taken a great deal of advantage, but, we just can't. So, I guess we're going to have to pass on this one. Thank you.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, I was frustrated by by this report, and I think that I appreciate the staff at helping me recognize where that frustration should really be placed, because what I'm seeing almost is because we have actually proceeded on our capital plan and completed the projects within our DC, we're not eligible. We don't have any eligible projects. Communities that have collected millions and millions in DCs and haven't actually worked on their capital plans are eligible. It's also frustrating that we have a perfect project in the Tiverton Water Project. It's shovel ready. It enables new housing. It already has identified municipal contribution. But because it wasn't in a plan from 5 years ago, we're not able to apply. I think that's frustrating for our residents, because these are tax dollars that they are contributing to, and yet we're not even able to apply. So I'm curious whether there's any opportunity, like right now, this plan is one application and you're done, and you're right, we have 9 days to apply. Is there an opportunity to provide some feedback to our MPP about, we would love to be a part of this program, but the application criteria and the process is so challenging that unfortunately we're not able to.
So, you know, it's not particularly productive to become Wendy Weiner, but there would be nothing wrong in the midst of this to direct staff to craft a letter to our MPP and say, seriously, like what are you expecting? So, and I don't think it's just this municipality. I think it is crafted towards some larger communities that I won't go into that, but anyway. So we'll just stop there. Kim, please.
Just to follow on the point you're making, Mr. Mayor, you can find online the discussions from Simcoe County and see how even an organization of that size struggled with this program. It's competitive, and you need to be able to clearly tie a significant housing build with a deep DC reduction. And in a competitive world, even though 400 units might mean the world to us, it will not be competitive in the larger scheme of things, very likely. So, you know, again, in speaking with the province, it's that urban-rural difference, I think, that probably, you know, we still need programs that are better aligned to the quantities and qualities that are present in smaller rural communities in Ontario.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, I was just going to say, like, one of the things that was announced was that there would be a specific northern rural and small urban element of the program, and yet I'm also seeing that kind of commentary out there that it's very, very challenging and it's unlikely. Like, I would rather apply for a program and maybe not get it, but at least have gone through and tried to do the application. But we don't even have anything eligible. And that's what's really frustrating to me is I don't have a problem if we don't get picked, as long as we've, you know, put ourselves out there and showed that we're committed and shown our community this is something we're serious about. But not even having the opportunity is what I'm really struggling with.
Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, through Chair. I'm just going to pick up on some comments that Councillor Blackwell made earlier about water. The development charges background study listed that supported the current DC bylaw that we have, talks about a total cost of water surface capital program of 4.26 million. And in the description in there, it talks about recovering DCs to recover costs for Tiverton and Kincardine standpipes. It also notes, as well as additional storage or treatment plant modifications as a result of growth planned in 2026 of $3 million. What exactly were those projects that amount to $3 million? And you know, when I know it might be by hook or by crook, that's probably not the right word, but if the province says it has to be in your DC background study, and we didn't specifically identify what the project was, but it says we've got $3 million in there, push the envelope. Sorry. So back to the original question is because there is that paragraph that I read from, and in addition there is a table in there of development-related capital program for water, but it still within there doesn't get into specifics about what this $3 million of growth-related capital work is. So I'm.
Director, any comment on that one?
So through discussion with the Director of Infrastructure and Development, it was relating to the Bruce Power project. So that's what that piece was.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
That wouldn't have been known though.
Kavanaugh, please.
20. Okay.
Thank you very much, and through the chair. My question to staff is largely, what changes are staff implementing now so that if this exact same opportunity were to come back out and they announced a second wave of this in 6 months, Kincardine could be in a position to submit an application for something?
Any, that's a proactive question, I believe. So here's a program, here's the framework that the funding has been provided under. Are there some steps that council and or staff can make to make us more eligible in the future? Is this development specific? We need to partner with somebody to put us in that favorable eligibility criteria. Any comments on that, Director?
So through you, to be honest, this has all been happening very quickly. Like, we would have to sit down and review and have conversations about it. So I don't have an answer for you right now. It's something that I think will take time, and through further review of the work that we're going to be doing in 2027, I think now that we have this in mind, we'll know what other information we need in order to be better prepared. That's all I can really say at this point.
And also to comment, Councillor, we might see who has been successful in receiving this funding and what their model has been. Do you have a follow-up on that?
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to comment that I'd like to see a plan to make that happen and come to reality, whether through staff or through a council setting a policy. Because I think the problem with this is the thing the public's going to take away from this is that Kincardine isn't ready. And I don't think that's true looking around the council table. But what I think it is that there are communities that have done a better job positioning themselves to secure the funding that supports housing and growth. And it feels easy and safe to be, it's not our fault, the province didn't design this to us or it wasn't accommodating. But at the end of the day, like, we have to start building into where the money is coming from if we want a chance to build and shape our future rather than just being reactive.
CAO, please.
One note is that given the municipal election, it's unlikely that there will be another round until a new council comes. So I do think we have a little bit of time. The other point would be that there are a number of communities in the province who have a very strong case for this money because they are in very difficult circumstances. They have had to put a pause on development entirely because they don't have water or wastewater capacity at all. And so again, it's who you are competing with. So I think that kind of colors the way that we would think about projects and, really want to hone in on those things where there's a critical capacity issue or a health and safety issue.
In a earlier conversation, our CAO framed it as, when you do a good job managing your business and grow at a rate that you can sustain, you don't get in line for provincial funding. Okay, so we have a motion. Oh, Councillor Munro, please.
Yeah, sorry, just a question. On the presentation, page 2, bullet point 4, it had municipality funds of 10% plus ineligible costs. Do you know what an example of the ineligible cost would be?
Yeah, so through you, it would be like anything that's that doesn't benefit, it's not for growth, it's a benefit to the existing population. So for these projects, you have to separate what's growth related and what's the non-growth related component. So anything that's non-growth related would be the municipality's contribution. In addition, anything post 2030 as well. So there's benefits that might be realized after the year 2030. Those would be costs that also the municipality would be having to pay for.
Okay, thank you.
So
For you, Mayor, sorry.
No, that's okay. So we have a motion before us that council receive this report for information, and an application will not be submitted at this time. All in favor? And opposed?
Who opposed?
I did.
Why? Just for the heck of it.
Just for principle. No. 2025 financial statements. We need a mover and seconder. The council receive KPMG LLP's 2025 audit findings report, and further, the council approve the 2025 consolidated financial statements as presented. Moved by Councillor Kavanagh and Williams. Director, and we also have Matt Batik from KPMG online with us. Welcome, Matt. Glad you're here.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Director, would you like to lead us through here, please?
So the purpose of this report is to present the 2025 audited consolidated financial statements for council approval as required under the Municipal Act. The external audit was conducted by KPMG, and the audit fieldwork took place primarily in the month of March in 2026, although there was still some interim work that occurred earlier in 2025 as well. And staff met all of the required timelines throughout this process. Once the financial statements are approved by council, they will be finalized and then made publicly available on the municipality's website. So I guess at this point, I would turn it over to Matthew Beddick from KPMG, and he's going to go over the audit findings report with council.
Matthew, welcome again.
Thank you. I will share my screen, which seems like I have access to. So in your agenda materials, you did have our audit findings report. I won't go through it in detail, but we'll touch on a few of the highlights just over the next few minutes. Before I get going with that, I want to thank Shelby and Roxana, the rest of the finance team, and anybody throughout the municipality that participated or answered or provided information to our team in completing our audit. Thanks to their cooperation, we're able to be here and get the work done on time and on budget. Skipping down a few slides, in terms of status, we did prepare this report for a couple of weeks ago. At that time, there were a handful of things that were still outstanding before we could finalize the audit opinion. I'm happy to say we've completed our legal confirmation process, and we are expected to, so we can knock that one off the list. The remaining items we're completing right now or will tie up over the next day or two, and we'll be in a position to issue our final audit opinion in a few days later this week. I would like to happy to report that the audit opinion is a clean audit opinion, so there are no qualifications or modifications, which is what you would expect. As I move through the presentation, we are required by professional standards to disclose the materiality that we used in conducting our audit. I'll say we use materiality for two things. We use it to set the extent of testing and scope of work that we perform. So a higher materiality generally would be lower testing and more things scoped out. A lower materiality would be more testing. We set materiality as a percentage of a benchmark. For municipalities in Ontario, we use your total revenues. And that benchmark requires us to set it between 0.5% and 3%. And so you can see for the current year, we're at about 1.8%, so we're about in the mid-range of that benchmark. And that just means we don't believe that there are significant risks in the audit strategy that require us to get more evidence to complete our work. But at the same time, we're cognizant that we don't want to miss things that would be left uncorrected and still be useful for users of the financial statements. This is very consistent with how we've done in the past and very consistent with how we would have done, how we perform all of our audits for municipalities across the province. The next handful of slides do provide a little bit more detail on some of the areas that attracted significant attention in our audit work. I'll really only focus on the slide here in front of us here, which is the required response from the auditor to consider that there might be intentional override of internal controls in the financial reporting process. This is required for all audits, so it's not unique to the municipality of Kincardine. And in response to that, we've gone through a number of different things. We look at what we refer to as high-risk entries or high-risk journals, looking at entries that don't make sense or in weird combinations, have unusually round values, happen at inappropriate times, things of that nature. So things we're looking for evidence that there would be an intentional misstatement of the accounts. And we use some software tools to help us with that as well. I'm happy to say we did not find anything in this test whatsoever. So a nice clean report there. The next handful of slides, I won't go through them in any detail, but they do provide some highlights of some of the areas we looked at. This slide here deals with development charges, which I know is a very important topic to municipalities these days, but sufficient to say we've looked at the development charges collected, how those were spent, and making sure they were recognized properly in the financial statements. As I skip down a few slides here, this slide here, it's entitled Required Inquiries of Council. But basically, we want to put there, if there's anything that you need to raise to the auditor's attention with respect to risks of fraud, risks of override of internal control, risk of illegal acts or wrongdoing, you do have an opportunity to bring that to our attention. And if there are anything significant that we need to be aware of, not only through this process, but all council has access to the auditor at any time, and they can reach out and provide input as necessary. On the next couple of slides, we deal with sort of qualitative aspects of what's included in the financial statements in terms of accounting policies. There weren't any sort of new ones in the current year per se. The ones we identified here were ones that were adopted in the prior year. We do note on this slide here, coming up in a couple of years, there'll be a slight change to sort of the format of the financial statements. No real changes to how assets and liabilities are recorded or accounted for, but really a change to make the financial statements look more comparable to what you might see in the non-municipal world. So stay tuned for that, and we'll certainly work with staff to work those through. Moving on to this slide here, this is actually a very good news slide, although there's no stars or exclamation points. Here, we're required to disclose if there were any items that we identified that required correction in the financial statements, and any items that we identified that didn't get corrected but we thought should. And we didn't have either of those. And so what this really means is the information that we were given to perform our audit procedures didn't have to be adjusted to produce the draft audited statements that you see before you. And this is unusual, and it's a very, very good story, and it speaks to the level of diligence and accuracy applied to the finance by the finance team. It also means that the general underlying records, and so reports and financial reports that you receive throughout the year, this does lend credibility to those. Certainly we don't look at those reports, and so we can't comment on them specifically. But here what we're saying is the underlying accounting system supports the information and doesn't need to be adjusted. So again, very, very good thing. I think the final thing that I will talk about that I haven't here is the identification of control deficiencies. And again, we did not identify any significant control deficiencies. So again, that's a good news story. So we're looking at sort of three things. We have an audit opinion that's clean, no modifications or qualifications, no items that required correction in the financial statements, and no significant control deficiencies. This is about as clean a report card as we can give. So I won't go through any of the other items in the presentation. There are some appendices and other information there should you need it. But at this point, I'll turn it back over to the chair for questions or comments.
Thank you, Matt. And I got to tell you that these reports are getting kind of boring because year after year after year, all we hear is the Corporate Services Department did an outstanding job. There's no misstatements. There's no things identified as being incorrect or fraudulent. So I'm just wondering if you could send us a form letter that instead of all that. So
well, who said accountants were boring?
I'd like to extend my thanks and counsels to Roxana for the outstanding way that she leads the financial department of our municipality. So anyway, are there any councillors that have questions? There will be questions about the numbers. They will come, but I'm wondering if it's appropriate to receive the report tonight and ask some questions about the numbers. We get the analysis quarterly, and is it a better choice from council's perspective to dig into those numbers tonight with Matt here, or would you prefer to hear them, when we go through the analysis? Like, how come this number's so high, or how come this number's so low, or what do we do with this surplus or whatever? Just, I'm, Roxana, go ahead.
So through you, so there's a variance analysis that's attached that explains all of the variances in the financial statements. It's an attachment to the report. I
Yep.
do the same report every year. So
Yep.
I would say that if council has questions after reading this material, then please give me a call or contact me, because for me to be able to answer questions on the spot that's not in this,
Yeah.
it will be very difficult for me
No.
to do that. So.
Absolutely. No, I understand that. A variance analysis. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, through your chair. First, I'd like to correct the record. By hook or by crook means to achieve a goal or get something done by any means necessary, whether by fair or unfair methods. So I'm assuming hook means fair and crook means unfair. So I was definitely thinking about hook and not crook. Okay. My question isn't about variance analysis. It's just actually an ask. Usually, my calendar is for June. I know these financial statements come. The first thing I go look is the operating surplus. There's a nice report in there about, or paragraph in there about it, transfers to the contingency fund, and some expenses in 2025 that aren't considered. For instance, $600,000 to the Kincardine Community Healthcare Foundation. My ask is, at this point in our term, could we get added to a future meeting in statistical and information reports a list of all the contributions made to the contingency reserve in our term, plus all the expenditures that came out of it? That's my ask.
Through you, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Stewart, you had a question?
Thank you. Matthew, job well done once again, and yes, I would credit the financial department that we have. I've been 8 years with them. I haven't seen any fault. Maybe you can help us at the council, because sometimes we get a little loose with the money ourselves. But I have quite a list here, because the most exciting part of the whole thing is the FS analysis. Those notes are just wonderful, but I agree with you, Chair, that we won't talk about that tonight, but we'll bring it up during budgets and everything else. But well done. So we'll just let this thing go through so we can get our grant money and continue on. Thank you.
Any further comments, Director or Matt?
None for me, thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion that we receive the report and approve the consolidated financial statements as presented. All in favor of that? Anyone opposed? And that's carried. Thank you for being with us tonight, Matt. We appreciate your work. Okay, we continue more numbers tonight. We have the Bruce Telecom Legacy Fund Annual Investment Report, and I go to Roxana. And do we have anyone online with us this evening? We do?
Yes.
All right, go ahead, Director.
Okay. Through you. So yes, so the purpose of this report is to provide council with an update on the performance and status of the Bruce Telecom Legacy Fund as of March 31st, 2026, approximately 2 years after the fund was established. We did a similar type of report last year, and this is a kind of a cumulative report from that first year. As council will recall, the Legacy Fund was established back in 2024 following the sale of Bruce Telecom, and council adopted an investment policy designed around an endowment-style approach with the primary goal of preserving the original capital and generating long-term stable investment income. So the investment portfolio remains diversified across several different asset classes. There's approximately 33% in GICs and high-interest savings accounts, 34% in the One Equity Fund, 17% in government bonds, and 16% in corporate bonds. The total principal invested is approximately $29.8 million, and since its inception, the portfolio has generated approximately $3.95 million in realized returns, which represents a cumulative return of approximately 13.2%. The strongest performance continues to come from the equity portion of the portfolio. The One Equity Fund has achieved an internal rate of return of approximately 18.3% since inception. So I did ask for Keith Taylor and Jason Hagan at One Investment to be present at this meeting, and they prepared a presentation to go over some of the results for One Investment. So at this time, I would like to turn it over to them.
Jason, Keith, I'm sorry, which one is which?
I'm Keith.
Hi, Keith. Welcome.
But by
And,
default, I am Jason.
Yeah, that leaves you as Jason. Okay. Thank you for being with us tonight. And do you have the screen to share with us? Or
Yep, I will do that right now. And just while I'm loading that, I would like to thank council again for finding some time to hear from us. And I will say that we do love to make the trip up to Kincardine as we have done in the past. However, schedules just didn't permit this year. So please forgive us for doing this virtually. All right, and I will just by way of introductions, Keith is our Chief Investment Officer. I'm our Program Manager, so we're going to tag team this. We'll let Keith do the front end talking about the Legacy Fund update, and then I will just offer a few comments to support Roxana's comment in the end of her report, talking about in the future there may be an opportunity for a broader investment portfolio. So over to you, Keith.
Thank you very much, Jason. I'll try to make this brief. Usually people want to talk more about their investments when they're not doing well. You don't have that problem. We have been doing very, very well, and I'll get to that in just a few slides. This gives a snapshot of the legacy portfolio that's invested by One Investments. As Roxana mentioned, there's other portions that are held outside for, I think it's for contingency purposes and this sort. So this is a snapshot of what happened in the first quarter of this year. As you may have noted, there were some moving parts in the first quarter, global conflicts and this sort, but that didn't really interfere with the performance. You actually made roughly about $200,000 in the first quarter, despite the noise. And based on this, you can see the breakdown by asset class. Next slide. And in terms of returns, this is well, these are internal rate of return. It accounts for cash flows in and out of the portfolio. And to the far right, you can see the snapshot overall. The portion that we manage has had an annualized return of 10.71%. Most of that performance has been coming from the equity side. The equity markets have been basically on fire for the last 2 years and doing very, very well, whereas the fixed income portfolio has held up. You don't expect spectacular returns from fixed income. It is sort of the ballast of the portfolio and sort of like smooths out the returns. And as you can see, in this year, the returns have continued to be quite strong. Next slide. We also, on a quarterly basis, will review the portfolio and its positioning, and as appropriate. Well, when we set the asset allocation for the portfolio, we set the target based on what's an appropriate risk level. And if the markets move and the value of your equities goes up or down, as the case may be, if it drifts significantly away from the target, we will tap Roxana on the shoulder and say, let's move some stuff around to bring the portfolio back to where it should be, so it has the risk profile that was set when we started the entire mandate. At the moment, there's really nothing that needs to be done. I think that there may be some cash movements when some of the contingency bits are figured out, but there's really no need for a rebalance at this time. And as I say, we review this on a quarterly basis, and as appropriate, we will nudge the treasurer. Next slide. This is my simple snapshot of how markets have done, all by numbers. 2 columns. One is duration. That is implies the interest rate sensitivity of these different components. The higher the number, the more sensitive they are to movements in interest rates. In 2025, and that's where these numbers are showing the returns from, there wasn't some notable changes in interest rates. The Bank of Canada moved on the short end of the curve, and the short-term rates went down and long-term rates went up. And that's why the duration is here. That gives you a hint of how much that impacted different parts of the bond market. And broadly speaking, the rising longer term interest rates was a big negative for long-term bonds. And what was happening at the other end of the yield curve was a bit more positive for short-term bonds. Most of the bonds in your portfolio are short to intermediate terms, so they did not really wear that negative performance from the long-term bonds. The other theme in the market was that very safe bonds didn't do as well as lower credit quality. And the BAA, are also known as triple B, outperformed the higher credit quality bonds like sovereign bonds. And of course, not to be left out of the conversation, the Canadian equity markets were up 31.7% last year, being one of the strongest global equity markets last year. And I guess a good chunk of that is due to the commodity market. Next slide, please. Gold. It's all gold. Gold was just like phenomenal last year. The price of gold hit somewhere in the range of 4,500 per ounce. It's basically gone ballistic, and gold producers, because their costs are fixed, as the price goes up, that just means that their margins go up a whole bunch, and they're just like gushing money. And although the price of gold was up, the gold stocks basically had some leverage to that. They were actually the gold subsector was up somewhere in the tune of 145%. So although it was a very small component of the overall TSX, because of the very large move, it had a huge impact on performance. I will note that the equity portfolio we run, is intentionally light on commodities, and that is to dampen volatility. And also, predicting which way commodity prices is going to go is it's a bit of a fool's game. You can never get the timing right. The manager intentionally, well, the mandate's set up to have about half the exposure to the resource sector than the TSX to dampen the volatility. Next slide. There we go. And here, this just gives you a snapshot of how the different subsectors of the Canadian Canadian equity market did last year. And you can see the materials sector had spectacular performance, up 100%. And again, that's all coming from the gold subsector. And the other sectors had, well, they did very well, but it's hard to outshine gold in a situation like this. And this is the main reason that the Canadian equity market outshined other equity markets last year, just because of the large exposure to the commodity sector. And the next slide. Yes, and this I think this is the last slide that we have here. This shows the credit spread. This is the additional yield you would get from owning a corporate bond versus owning a treasury, a sovereign bond of a similar maturity. And this is a way of gauging about how valuations. Over the long period of time, you've got that little dotted line in the middle that shows what's the average credit spread, and usually moving into a corporate bond, you can pick up somewhere in the range of about 120 basis points over long periods of time. But because the market was maybe very robust, and the demand for credit was quite strong, the prices of credit was pushed up, which narrowed that spread. So in terms of the overall historical context, corporate bonds are a little bit more tightly valued than they have in the past. Not to say anything about directionally what this means, but it just is saying is that you're not getting paid as much for the risk of taking on corporate exposure than you have in the past. And you'll note that there's that little dip on the very, very far right, or actually check mark pointing up. That actually happened just in March this year. That's what happened when the hostilities in the Middle East broke out, and this shows you how the market is reacting to risk. I think that was the last slide, if I'm not mistaken.
Excellent.
So
Thanks,
over to
Keith.
you, Jason.
Perfect. So I'll just spend a couple of moments here to tell you a story with a couple of pictures. At the end of the director's report, there was a comment about an opportunity for a prudent investment portfolio once the municipality has completed its transition of the legacy fund fully deployed and remove out contingencies. So Roxanne had just asked us to provide a couple of comments as to what a prudent investment opportunity looks like. So just quickly, under the Municipal Act, there's two streams of investment thought. The first is the legal list, so the light blue, and that's what you're currently invested under. Everything is Canadian. The rules say that if what you want to purchase is not listed, it's not allowed. And one investment is named in the regulation, and we have certain parameters that we can invest in that other organizations can't. So you guys have leveraged all that through your legacy fund. Prudent investment was provided to municipalities as an option in 2019, and it leverages a different section of the Municipal Act and a different part of the eligible investment rules. And it says that a municipality can invest in anything they deem appropriate, and I'll explain that in a bit more detail because there are some rules around it. But effectively, it allows you to take off the handcuffs of Canada only. It allows you to get into other asset classes and other levels, as Keith said, the triple B bonds, things of that sort. And one investment does offer an investment option in that space. So we just wanted to make you aware of it. So if I had to show it as a picture, what's the difference? Legal list, all Canada, very safe, highly rated, very nationalistic, not the greatest amount of diversity though, for a municipal portfolio of the size that Kincardine has with the legacy fund. Prudent investment, you can access the world, you can manage risk through different asset categories, different markets, different investment types. So effectively, you're creating a better opportunity for a longer term advantageous return while managing risk through just diversification. But all of these things are opportunities along with these things here. So bigger investment market, better diversification, subject matter expertise, and I'll speak about that because the Municipal Act requires a certain amount of expertise, fiduciary oversight, better risk-adjusted returns over the longer term, and an independent investment board, and I'll touch on that too, and the opportunity to take investments off of the side of the treasurer's desk and put it in the sole focus of the independent investment board. So I call it depoliticizing the investments. It's got a long-term plan, a long-term a scheme that it's following. So now within the law, I always say this isn't a decision to be taken lightly because it does have some requirements tied to it. So a municipality can become a prudent investor, and they have to do so via a bylaw that says we wish to become one. And to do that, they have to meet a certain asset threshold. So to have their own investment board independent, they have to do it. They have to have $100 million of assets. To do it with a joint investment board, like One Investment offers, any municipality is eligible. But the municipality has to follow the certain rules, and this is the importance of the independence in the board. Municipality has to exercise care, skill, diligence, and judgment. They have a duty to obtain advice. They have to consider investment planning criteria, and they have to diversify to an appropriate extent. The regulation dives a little deeper at the bottom here and says that the municipality must invest long-term money via an investment board. So effectively, if you choose to move to the prudent investment side of the rules, the investment board is a requirement, and the investment board helps you achieve all of the items I spoke about here that are actually legislatively required. And if a municipality moves this way, and some of them have, it's not a huge hill to climb. It just involves some thoughtful consideration. The investment board is only used to manage what we call MNRI. That's money not required immediately. So operating accounts, GICs, all those investments still exist in this world if you move to prudent investment. And those investments stay under the care and control of the treasurer, no different than now. But if you drew a line in the sand, either call it anything for 3 years or longer, or only our Bruce Telecom Legacy Fund, you can put parameters around buckets of money or time frames, and then have the broader investment powers available for those. So as I said, anything that fits the requirement in your investment policy becomes money not required immediately and goes over to the investment board. Anything that does not stays in the care and control of the treasurer under the same rules you follow now. So at the end of it, it's a lot to say that there's a bit of work at the front end to consider prudent investment and how the municipality has their say with an independent investment board is that the municipality creates the investment policy, no different than the policy you have now, just with a bit more detail. And that are the guardrails that the investment board must follow. It's up to the investment board then to take that policy and to create the investment plan. And that's where Keith and myself and our team come into play, and our investment management partners. They help create a plan that will maximize the opportunity for the municipality once we know a lot of detail about the amount, how long it's invested for, the purpose, the flexibility, all of that. And then that comes to be the investment plan that is considered by the Joint Investment Board, which would then approve Kincardine as a participant on the prudent investment side under our joint board, and you would become a part of the program that we run with these municipalities listed here. So there's some small ones and there's some very, very big ones. And collectively, we manage about $2.8 billion on this side right now. So this is just to kind of help whet the appetite of council for when you're fully deployed with the legacy fund and you may be looking for a more mature investment option. With that, I think we're happy to take any questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks so much, Jason. Keith, any questions from council members regarding the investment report? Councillor Steinhoff-Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I just had one question, because obviously you will know the answer better than I would. But to me, when I was reading this, I was like, wow, this has performed really well. Like, is there any concerns that this might level off in the market and I shouldn't be expecting this great of a return in future years, or is this something I can continue to expect from the portfolio? I was just curious.
Well, just continue.
No, I can't ask the question.
No, the answer is
no.
No.
Please.
you can't expect that.
We'll let our consultants answer the question. How long can you guarantee a 13% return on our investments, please?
I wish I could say it would happen to last forever. But no, the whole point is in the good years, you feel good and there's going to be a drought somewhere on down the line. So, I mean, thank you for asking the question, because usually we're the ones that have to coach. Because the people get intoxicated on the good returns, and there will definitely be years where you're losing money, and it's actually very, very beneficial for the legacy fund. I think the intent is to have some annual payouts. Building up a buffer at the very, very front is the best way to plan it. Not that we can plan the returns, but you definitely should expect years where you're going to lose money. And what you've earned over the last 2 years shouldn't in no way represent what the long-term expectations are. If anything, it's maybe double of what you should reasonably expect.
Yep, 3% over a long, long time is a good return. Right on. Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Thank you very much, Keith, for introducing this prudent investor sort of program. And, we're not going to say yes tonight, but, I just want to tell my fellow councillors, if this is really, truly a legacy fund, this would probably be a program that we'd be very interested in joining, because it's long-term. You're looking at 10, 20 years and things like that. And one of these days, I know that our treasurer will probably bring it to the board and to the council and say yes or no, but it's something to look into. And truly, I'm going to say, a legacy fund, this is where you want to be. Thank you.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you. Again, I know we're not exploring the prudent investor thing, but one of the things that we have discussed is using the annual returns. If we were to ever explore doing a prudent investor, would we be able to still have access to the returns, or is it something that it would lock all of that away when you talk about it not being for the long term, or only being for the long term? Sorry.
Yeah, the funds are still liquid. They're invested with the investment horizon in mind, but it's your money, and if there's ever a time Keith can build that into the plan, that there's an expectation of an annual drawdown.
We also do, just to add that we also do have two municipalities under the prudent investor offering that have legacy funds just like yours. So yeah, it's your money. However you want to get have it back, that's fine. The only caveat is that liquidity is always a bit of an issue. If it's a recurring income stream, I don't think it would be an issue. But what we have under the prudent investor, there are some a portion of the portfolio that might be available for alternative investments, which may be less liquid. That would be a consideration that the council would need to consider if they move down the road for a prudent investor.
Councillor, please.
Thank you. This isn't necessarily a question, but through you more of just a statement. I think one of the things that I set out when I wanted to come onto council was to hopefully leave the municipal finances in a little bit better shape than I found them. And I really want to, express my appreciation to our staff, and our fellow councillors. I think this is one of those things that it's really easy to look at a big pot of money and get excited about spending it. It's much harder to, be the ant and put it away carefully and plan for the future. And this is something that has the real potential to, if we return some of the growth back into it, to continue it to grow. It has something, it could be the potential for our children and our children's children to continue having an investment in the community. So it's exciting to see the big numbers, but I also think that long-term vision and knowing that we're trying to do something that will benefit future councils far beyond our own is something that I'm quite proud of. So it's very exciting.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, just to help, I've been studying a little bit more on this prudent investor group, and you can structure it any way you want. I mean, we can take 25,000, put it long term, 25 million, put it long term. We can take the interest and have it adjusted accordingly. So it's really up to us to figure out exactly how we want to do it. It's not a question that you hand over everything and all the interest will just be locked up. It's how we structure it. So I know the treasurer will go through all that one of these days, and we will have a vote whether we want to go that way. So it's a lot more flexible than you think, but it is long-term vision.
Okay, thank you for those questions. Jason, Keith, thank you for the presentation and the work you do on One Investments. Appreciate that. And thank you to Roxana, as she sits on the board of directors for One Investment too. Right?
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, following in that line of conversation, Bruce Telecom legacy funds are part of our investment portfolio, but there's more to it than that. So no, there's no vote. That was just for information. Our next information report is the 2025 annual investment reports, which is a little broader picture. So Roxana, please.
Yes, through you. So this report is all-encompassing. It provides council with the municipality's annual investments for the year ended December 31st, and it's a requirement under OREG 43897 and the municipality's investment policy. So as of December 31st, the municipality held approximately 34 million in investments, and that excludes cash as well as the Westario Power equity investment. And this represents an increase of 6.2 million from the prior year. The portfolio earned approximately 2.09 million in interest and investment income during 2025, and the return was 6.2% compared to 5.2% in 2024. So the improved results were primarily driven by the reinvestment of the Bruce Telecom sale proceeds and continued stable returns from GICs and fixed income investments. So this report is just provided for information purposes, and there's no resolution required.
Any questions regarding that report? No. Okay. We're moving on. We have this evening Nolan Cipriano and Joanna Burton is here tonight to talk about the Davidson Center and Tiverton Sports Center design review. Nolan, Joanna, do you want to just come on up and sit in the two gray chairs here at the, I'm sorry, Emily, to come sit here, and then we're going to be at this for more than 2 minutes, so. Just so we know what we're talking about, thank you to Mike DiGiovanni and Emery Thompson, their leadership through the Community Services Department. I need a mover and seconder that council receive the report from McCollum Sather on Davidson and Tiverton Center's feasibility studies and the Class D cost estimates. And further, the council directs staff to proceed to the next phase of project development, including refinement of scope, updating costing, funding strategy, and development of a project team to be considered as part of the Mayor's 2027 budget. Moved by Councillors Stewart and Steinhoff Gray. Welcome. Mike, Emery, do either of you want to comment before we pass it over to Nolan and his team? Oh, seriously, you got to say something.
Okay, I can do that. Thank you, through you, Mayor. This is an exciting opportunity for us to bring something to council that we've been working on for the last few months with our friends at McCollum Sather. We really have been looking forward to the future of our recreational assets and what that will look like. We know that we have aging infrastructure in the community at the Davidson Centre and Tiverton Sports Centre, and there's the big question about what do we do going forward with that. I think today's presentation will begin the conversation. We're nowhere near ending that conversation. We really are at the starting blocks here, and give us somewhere to jump off from for future planning. And I'll turn it over to Nolan.
No, you won't. Not yet. I would like to acknowledge Councillors Blackwell and Stewart, who've been sitting on the Recreation Ad Hoc Committee, who have provided input and guidance about, you know, what community features and guidance and assets and changes that we might address, and Nolan and his team have been challenged to keep up with the great ideas, I think, but there's a great presentation. So now we can turn it over to Nolan. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
Well, firstly, it's great being here in person. I know we've had many virtual calls with many members of this group, so it's great to... Yes, right? We're saying on the drive here, you know, virtual calls versus real. It was also interesting to see how tall people were. So everyone is the height that we thought, so that's great. Yeah, so, you know, I included the land acknowledgement in here. Oh, yeah, who's changing slides? That's the best way. Okay, I'll just do like this one. So you can go next slide. Yep, so our McCollum Sather land acknowledgement. The Office of McCollum Sather are situated on the traditional treaties of the Indigenous peoples who have been stewards of this land since the time immemorial. In Hamilton, we recognize the traditional treaties of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, lands covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and adjacent to the Haldimand Treaty territory. In Waterloo, we acknowledge the Haldimand Tract, which encompasses 6 miles on either side of the Grand River and is traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people, that also covered by the Upper Canada and Haldimand Treaties. In Toronto, we acknowledge the ancestral and traditional territories of the Ojibwe and Nanaji people, in particular the Mississaugas of the Credit, whose territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties. Again, yeah, if we have any more offices, that's going to start to get really long. Next slide. Oops, I'm following along here. Yeah, so a quick table of contents. We're going to go over Davidson Centre, looking at the existing conditions, sort of the process that we took to develop the different options, run through those, look at some renderings, and then similar for Tiverton, and then sort of a brief summary. So our team, as I know many of you have met us, I'm Nolan Cipriano, an associate architect at McCollum Sather, and joined by my colleague Joanna, who's an intern architect. And then our other colleague, Nicole, is a architectural co-op student who's been with us for the past 6 months and has been contributing to the project as well. So Davidson Centre, we had the opportunity near the end of last summer to do a pretty extensive tour, next slide, and explore the building. You know, I think as we all know, there are some challenges there in terms of circulation getting around, you know, but we didn't get that lost. I think some of the key takeaways and things that we really saw that were needed within the space was a really centralized location and gathering space to unify all these different components of the building that have been developed over a period of time. Looking at the opportunity of color, materiality, branding, to really improve wayfinding experiences, looking at how to improve circulation vertically, as currently it's a series of ramps kind of cutting through the space, which from an accessible perspective is great, not relying on stairs, but you take up a lot of space and really do not contribute to connecting all the different elements of the building. Looking at where the administrative offices are within the building, kind of on that top level, how to optimize those. Parking, was a concern, and how do we look at the site plan to really optimize parking, and then adaptability and flexibility. And I think that was, one of the comments we heard in the conversation was, when the David Center was originally constructed, it wasn't done in a way that was forward-thinking in how it can be added onto and grown over time, which has kind of resulted in where we are now in sort of a kind of somewhat confusing building with multiple entrances. Where's the front door? If you're doing different programs, how do you get around? So in this exercise, wanting to develop a plan that is executable now or in different phases, and that allows for future adaptability and growth. And then part of that as well, key takeaways around improved mechanical and building systems, washrooms, and a lot of sensitive spaces that need immediate attention. Next slide. So existing site plan at a high level, I think the takeaway here is there's lots of little black arrows showing where the doors are, which was one of the concerns that we heard of, where's the front door? How do you get into it? If you're going to the pool versus the arena versus the gym, you're kind of all over the place. Next slide. We can just kind of run through these ones relatively quickly. Again, I think the takeaway here is you'll see there's a lot of different plans for all the different floors, as there's a lot of different levels in the building, which observationally was what we saw. So existing pool level plan. Part of our study was kind of breaking up the space into these different colors, looking at what was circulation space, what was recreational space, what was those recreational support spaces, building services and administrative spaces, looking at from a functional programming perspective. What do we have too much area? What do we not have enough area? Where do we need more area? And kind of where are those located? So that kind of color coding theme continues itself throughout the presentation. Next slide. Existing, gym level floor plan with the arena. So trying to draw connections on what's on what level with what. Next slide. Again, the one thing that you see in all these, again, is those two large ramps in the center, the two yellow bars are kind of consistent in all the plans. So then our multi-purpose level floor where the athletic center is on its own different level. Next slide. That existing ground level 0 where the front door is the smallest level, which is where that ramp is. Next slide. Another level, which is the second level, access to the stands of the ice rink, then some additional multi-purpose rooms. And then the next level is the running track level. So next slide. You can see that one there. So I think just inherently, a lot of different levels, all different floors, getting around them. I think everyone who's been there knows there's a challenge there. So trying to figure out how do we address that and how do we fix this? What's the solution? Next slide. It took a lot of time to further understand how this building's put together, given kind of the levels and the ramps and the corridors. So looking at it sort of in these different sections, how the spaces connect. And again, I think at the one on the right, you can really see that yellow circulation with the ramps is kind of cutting right through the building. Next slide. And then kind of what that looks like as a block diagram. So using that similar colors for the big darker spaces are the main recreational areas, which all in themselves more or less function quite well. The hockey rink functions great. The gym and the track as itself functions quite well. The secondary kind of gym, while it could use a refresh, serves its purpose and is highly used. The pool, needs some deferred maintenance, but organizationally, I guess, the pool itself isn't, probably the weakest link, but that was kind of all these pieces together, or independently, don't have significant issues. It's when they're all kind of pushed together, where that fragmentation comes from. Which is the key takeaways from looking at those plans. Again, accessibility issues, staff space issues, unclear entry points, lack of parking, and adaptability over time. Next slide. So I'll pass it over to Joanna, who will talk through kind of the iterative process. This is always fun, you know, we have like 8 months of work and we're just gonna smash it together for you in 10 minutes. But
Thank you, Nolan. So one thing we did while working through the process was to make a physical model to just understand the different levels. You can go to the next slide. And then going through the iterative process, we had some internal design workshops where, again, one of the main things that came out of it was all of the half levels that go through the building and the circulation issues. Next slide. And then you can see here in this diagram how we went from having essentially 6 different levels into creating 3 centralized levels within the building to simplify the circulation and remove that central ramp essentially throughout all of the options that we created.
So next slide. Yeah, so it was simplifying the levels, having a ground floor, pool level and second floor was kind of the key. The second challenge of this was looking at how do we, break this up and what do our options look like? I think the initial idea was, is it option 1 over here, option 2 over there, and option 3 something completely different. As we worked through this process, it became pretty clear again that it was, circulation and accessibility was going to solve a lot of these challenges. And the best way to kind of present that through, instead of 3 completely different options, were 3 iterative options that could be done sort of either a la carte or building off each other, looking at the scope of the intervention. So option 1, looking at that kind of 3D axo, looks at primarily the existing pool and the atrium space as part of its scope. Option 2 extends out a little bit further, adds in a reconfiguration of currently the change rooms up at the top right, and reallocating some of that back of house space, and then looking at improved and enlarged change rooms adjacent to the rink currently. So you have easier direct access, as opposed to having them kind of at the back of the hall and some circulation issues there. And the third option was a new pool facility, kind of anchored on at the sort of northeast of the site. So next slide. Or is it west? Yeah, the direction's not my. Yeah, so option 1, looking at that axis, so everything kind of dashed out, is kind of taken out of the scope. And what we're looking at doing is, again, that reorientation of levels, looking at a very linear circulation within the spine, which lends itself well, where you have the hockey rink on one side, the pool at the other, and kind of the gym and the track at either end. Wanting direct connection, if not physically, but at least visually between these spaces, which helps with wayfinding, establishing sense of place within the facility, and then creating that central node and gathering space. Next slide. So option 1 site plan looks at a small addition at the bottom right there of the screen, and then dashed in the middle you can kind of see where that central atrium is. Next slide. So the interesting part again with all those levels is the pool level isn't like a full floor below the ground level. 6:30 p.m. I think you watch. So to make this kind of all work, pushing down that atrium to the same level as the front door was kind of the key driving feature. So you had a central level where you could walk in from the street, have an elevator, have a stair that take you up to the track level, and everything else is kind of more or less. To make that work, currently the change rooms for the pool and support facilities are kind of under that ramp system. So to push that ramp system down to get the level, you have to relocate those support services for the pool somewhere else, which is that sort of addition at the bottom that we looked at. So optimizing the change rooms, the pool staff space at the same level as the pool, and kind of building those out towards the front of the building, which allows you to modernize, improve accessibility within those change rooms as well by building them new, and then really utilize that space where the ramp is currently for circulation. So that's kind of the common theme for all these options was we need to eliminate this ramp, readjust the levels, put in a central atrium, and to do that, something has to be done with the pool and the relocation of the change rooms. Next slide. So at ground level, a much more simpler plan. I think, previously when we looked at the existing plans, you never actually saw the whole building at once because they're all different levels. Here at the kind of right-hand side of the screen, you can see that little black arrow, so the entry remains sort of at the same location. Close to the entry is a series of offices, storage, and multi-purpose rooms, which would serve the administrative staff. The thought process there being, if you're coming in for registration, looking at different events, you need to speak with staff. You're not kind of going through the maze up to the top level, and then also mitigating some of the accessibility issues to those office administrative spaces. And then that whole great big area in yellow becomes that central atrium. We have the opportunity for a feature stair to bring you up to open to below kind of overlook. You have concession centralized to the space, some additional storage. Reallocating the washrooms kind of to one place off the atrium, and then really improving the connection to the fitness center as well. I know when Mike took us through the building, it was a follow me, and you're kind of doing this through doors and corridors and stairs, and yes, very exciting. But I couldn't imagine being at the ice rink and then wanting to go to the gym through the building. It'd be very complicated. I still get lost. Yeah, I do not doubt that. So in this case, it's again that central spine of the atrium, and then having that connection down to the gym area, the fitness area at the front, and reconfiguring some of those spaces there. So utilizing sort of a shared kitchen space for the seniors room and that existing gym, whereas currently there's kind of two different spaces. So rejigging that again to really free up that circulation. And then next slide. On the second level, again, a much more simplified plan. You have that yellow kind of second floor of the atrium, which you'll see in some imagery is intended to be kind of open to below, bringing natural light in. So when you're in that atrium space on either level, you can see physically into the pool, you can see to the ice rink, you can see to the concession, you can see up to the meeting rooms, and you can see the sky. So you're really connected to everything, and you're really able to place yourself quite logically within the building. And then incorporating a couple more additional multi-purpose rooms. So functionally, kind of in all these options, wanting to locate those multi-purpose rooms off of that central area, understanding that they can be used for a variety of different functions. So again, whether you're going there for a completely unrelated recreational meeting, or you're renting a room for something, not having to go into the bowels of the building somewhere to find this small room to utilize, but anchoring those directly off of that public space. So next slide. So here are those kind of axos updated. You can see there in the yellow. Now you have that kind of yellow block on the left, which is that central atrium, really opening that up and connecting, again, I think really those two spaces where when you're in the building, you have actually no idea that the pool and the ice rink are probably 40 feet apart on the other side of kind of all this built up form. So next slide. Option 2 kind of is everything I just said, and more. But wait, there's more. So same areas of focus, clear separation between all the dedicated spaces, and we did a lot of time looking at if you're coming into the building and you're taking your kid to the change room, where would you drop them off? If you're going to the gym to do some running, how are you going to move through the building to do that? If you're going to the fitness center, at the time when your kid is hockey practice, how would those things kind of happen concurrently? And that's where this kind of ease of circulation came from, and this wanting to create like a rhythm of movement. So in this option here, we're looking at, again, sort of the two arms on either side of the ice rink. Some of the feedback we heard was the size of the change rooms were somewhat small and lacking in space, and then the additional change rooms that were kind of built on the other side of that corridor, kind of tucked away in the back. Some circulation issues on actually getting to the ice rink, and also safety concerns, walking through these long corridors with a great amount of disconnect. Next slide. So this takes things a bit further. It increases the proposed addition onto where the current entry is, and then it adds on a smaller addition flanking the existing change rooms. Next slide. So here's where the pool gets kind of fun. So if we're looking at doing an addition, rebuilding change rooms, and doing all these things, there was ample discussion on the condition of the pool, understanding there's a big mechanical retrofit that would need to be done to a lot of the systems and equipment. And in doing all this is the opportunity to capitalize on that work and actually extend the pool to create sort of like a separate yet adjacent therapy pool for different uses. And then again, similar configuration with the change rooms, And then that yellow bar there would connect directly up to that central atrium space. So again, you're walking into the atrium, you can see the open stairs down to the pool, you can see the ice rink, you can see the gym, you can kind of see all the different components and how to get around. Next slide. At the main floor, the changes here from kind of option 1 are at the top of the page, where again, all those change rooms on the left of the ice rink are extended and built out, kind of where that current ramp is going up to that exit. So really able to essentially take the change room space that's on the right-hand side of the rink currently and kind of relocate it all together. So you have direct access from the change rooms into the ice rink and kind of one spot to go. What that means is then you're taking a lot of that back of house kind of storage space and reallocating and consolidating it kind of at the top right corner, which I think makes for simplified servicing, storage, and kind of having all of the different zones complete. So you have change rooms, ice rink on this side, you have back of house storage over here, and your central atrium kind of connecting it all. Then option 2, next page, extended viewing area as well, kind of built up over those change rooms, so not a lot of changes there. Next slide. Very similar to the previous ones. Again, that yellow central atrium connecting the 2 different spaces. And next slide. And then, but wait, there's more again. Option 3, which is again, these were intended to be iterative, and not all encompassing. So kind of looking at all the different pieces, is a new pool. So does the current pool, function as it will? Does it need to be improved? Can the option 2 pool be turned into an additional gymnasium area and have a new purpose-built pool constructed adjacent to the existing building? Next slide. That's with the retractable roof. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So you can see the scope of the proposed interventions there with an additional build out in sort of the top pocket. Next slide. So this remains the same. You have your pool and your change rooms. Next slide. And then our ground floor plan here you can see is slightly different. So the atrium, fitness area, all of that remains the same. We have the change room, improved change rooms allocation and organization, and then we have a new pool area located off of the central atrium space there as well, with new change rooms and staff space as well. Next slide. That remains kind of the same. And then the next slide, I think this you can kind of see on the right-hand side where that new pool kind of comes in. So kind of mimicking the same kind of mirroring condition that we have currently, where you have the pool on one side, the rink on the other. Now you'd be kind of flipping it again. Next slide. So these are some conceptual renderings that Joanna can kind of speak to.
Yeah, so these are intended to give the kind of overall feeling of what the space could be with potentially additional light and more sight lines into the main atrium area. Next slide. And then this is kind of the idea of an open atrium with the entry further on, and you can kind of see the pool to the right side there, and then the rink would be on your left. Next slide. Again, looking at the atrium with seeing the pool now on your left and then the rink on your right, just having sight lines and all through the building with the concession straight ahead and just really connecting the upper level to the lower level.
So conceptual renderings, that roof is also retractable fully, of course. So the intent of these isn't to capture like materiality, or like design and the actual confirmed design, but more to exemplify what that kind of space could be. And again, as Joanna was mentioning, in this image you can see the rink on the left, the pool on the right. Whether you're on either floor, you can see the meeting room kind of above in the concession, and I feel like seeing the sky is always helpful in grounding as well. So the plan would be post to figure out what this all looks like materiality-wise, obviously through a continued development, but just to kind of give a sense of what these spaces spatially would start to feel like, and drawing on those visual connections. Next slide. So they'll cost money. Next slide. No. Oh, sorry, you can go back a slide. So as part of that, and including the staff report, was the Class D cost estimates, and working with the cost consultant and with the group throughout these development, presenting in a way that again was, itemized and understanding where it wasn't, one big number at the bottom of, here's it all or none, but kind of broken up into those different areas. So cost item 1 was, okay, we need to do the pool and we need to do the atrium. And that's in that Class D report. Cost item 2 was, okay, what if we want to do the reconfiguration of the change rooms and the back of house? Cost item 3 was reconfiguring the fitness center at the front of the building, and then cost option 4 was the pool. So to provide council with, the information of, general, Class D is again, plus or minus based off of square foot takeoff. So, by no means gospel, but gives you an order of magnitude of what these different interventions would be, which then will hopefully provide you the insight and the information to start to make informed decisions of what makes the most sense to do and what those implications would be cost-wise. So that's Davidson. Next slide. Tim is moving on to the Tiverton.
Okay, so we're gonna pause just for a moment. Thank you for that, the start of this, and just for a little context, a lot of this is driven by the age of the pool itself. We know that there's upgrades that are going to be needed on the arena floor. We know that there are some accessibility issues and functionality issues, but a lot of it, a big percentage, the committee recognized was the need for pool refurbishment. And if we're going to do that, it's not inexpensive. What does the potential look like moving forward? Really, really high level at this point, this presentation, but certainly if council has questions about intent or direction or something like about the Davidson Center in particular, please offer those now. So, Amanda, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. One of the questions I was going to ask you is if you've seen this done before with a significantly older building that's not quite built right. When I saw the renderings, I was very excited because I don't know if you've ever been in the Orangeville Arena, but I was recently there and I couldn't believe the sight lines you had to everything. They even have their library in there. So like everywhere where you look, you can actually see and feel part of something. Like it was the most open building I've ever been in. And I actually think I was talking to Councillor Stewart. I was like, I wish we could have something like this, but we've already built something. And then I looked at renderings and I think I called Councillor Hinchberger and said, could this even be done with all the concrete? So like, I'm curious, have you done this type of retrofit before? Because the renderings just look so utterly different. And I believe the answer is yes, but.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so I think most recently, we did a similar scaled project, maybe a slightly smaller scale project at the Peach King Arena in Grimsby, which now has a different name. I can't remember what it's called, like refrigeration something. But we did at the Peach King Arena in Grimsby with like a new atrium space and, really looking at sight lines. A few years ago, we also did Valley Park Community Center in Hamilton Mountain, which was a similar age building, and there was a lot of security concerns there with circulation and mobility through the site. And they had built on a library addition to it as well. So it was like a new library and reconfiguration of that space. Yeah, so it's definitely possible. I think the challenge here is there's a lot of, as my father would say, a lot of cement. So got a lot of concrete in there, and which doesn't make things necessarily easy, but it's definitely doable. I think that the challenge is going to be operational, keeping the facility operational and phasing. Yeah, so, I always say whenever anybody asks me an architectural question, like, anything's possible if you have enough time.
Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much, and through the chair, thank you very much for this presentation. It's really exciting to see this coming forward. Just as a curiosity question, when this was being developed, was there any feedback sought from local user groups? I'm specifically thinking about option 2 there, where you were looking at reallocating and moving some of the backspace. I know we have the Bulldog sort of in that one back corner that you were foreseeing. Was there any input sought from any of those groups?
So it's through you, Chair. I think for this exercise, a lot of the input came directly through Mike and his team by proxy through the user groups. I think we'll touch on what's the next steps of this. It's, as a feasibility, it's like, what can we do? Like, what are the options here to make this work, generally speaking? And the community engagement is obviously a huge part of kind of that next step of how you really check all those boxes and make sure you're doing something that's going to work, again, functionally now and for the future. So, you know, the long and short is not directly, but like indirectly through Mike and his team.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Well done.
Oh,
It's good.
just a minute.
You probably need to
no,
have somebody else.
Mike, you were going to comment regarding the consultation process, if you don't mind, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Absolutely, just adding on to what Nolan had said. At this point, we were just looking at feasibility and scale of magnitude. We will certainly have consultation with groups as we go forward. And as Nolan had said, some of these things, as we proceed in the project, will likely change as a result of that consultation and conversations in this room. So that's where we will be, but not as of yet.
Councillor Monroe.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Just a question, I'm coming into this a bit late, so maybe it's been talked about or discussed already. Has there been any discussion on the different options on how that impacts the parking, like percentage-wise? It might be, if not, maybe it might be a good piece of information if it's going to impact the parking lot.
Yeah, so through your chair, yes, so I think in some of these site plan options there, we looked at how to rationalize the parking, and I think where this can come up was specifically on the existing track, because I guess there is the potential that there might be future plans for the track space, which would open up some of the parking there. And I think with at least options 2, and most of them include that addition near the entryway, so there'd be sort of a reconfiguration of the access into it, because I know that's kind of a pinch point. You know, you have kind of one way in and one way out. You know, so I think as part of the, you know, further schematic development, especially at the site plan, it would be looking at how to actually get more or optimize the parking in there and the flow of traffic. So it was looked at, again, at a high level in terms of does it work, knowing that it's hinged to a couple other outcomes from a couple different other conversations.
Thank you.
Councillor Pranger, please.
Thank you, through the chair. Again, thank you for this report and presentation. I'm trying to reconcile the drawings for option 3. The way I read them, it shows 2 pools, both the existing one and a brand new one. Is that the proposal? We would have 2 pools, or because you had mentioned that the original pool could be transformed into something else, but it's showing them both there. So.
Yeah. So through your chair, yes. So again, we're starting to get kind of nuanced. So like with all the options, as you know, the mayor was saying, like the pool is kind of the catalyst for this. So that, you know, existing pool, something needs to happen with it, you know, and in doing that, we need to do the atrium space. So kind of step 1 is the pool. So that pool would exist. I think with option 3, the intent is, you know, at some point in time, if it's like, let's build a new pool, that existing, like the renovated pool would, you know, could remain in place if there was a programmatic need for it, or could be reconfigured into like an additional gym or multi-purpose space.
Yeah. Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I must admit, Councillor Steinhoff-Gray gave me a great idea. I always thought that having a pool separate doesn't really disrupt, because, you know, taking away the old pool and putting a new one, you could build a new one while using the old one. But actually, Councillor Steinhoff-Gray, you really gave me an idea, because I've been to Orangeville. And you know what could happen in that old pool area? We could put the new library and really consolidate everything into one sort of community center. And it'd probably be big enough. And I'm sorry to do that to you. We should have thought about that, but that could be another option for us, and put the library in the whole community center.
Yep, this is pretty high level. Don't even answer that question. Okay, so there we go. So, Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thanks so much. I really enjoyed being a part of this committee and working with you. I lived with an architect for a while, and I don't envy the task you guys had to try and figure out how to consolidate that building. It was a big thought process, and I think what this really highlights to me was when we started the conversation with the committee. I think the very first question we tried to understand was, is it worth trying to do anything in these buildings that we have, or is it worth looking at a new consolidated build? And And I think it's probably not a surprise to anyone that I was a pretty strong advocate for keeping 2 community centers in each of our major communities. And what I think is really great is to see through our feasibility studies and through the work that you've done that a lot of the building components are there and they're still workable, but it's more about how we get people from one space to the other, and then the pool's kind of the elephant in the room. What I did want to say as well, it's a current weakness for sure, but it's also a proposal of strength when we look at maybe moving forward with a kind of concept like this, is the fact that there's so many entrances to the exterior in each programmatic space. So whether that helps to keep things operating while we're addressing the central feature. Again, I think just for the public's awareness, these are not plans that we're building. These are not finished. These are, is it even feasible to try and turn the existing rec center that we have into something that can meet the needs of today and the future? And I think you did a really good job of working with an old building with a lot of character and trying to figure out a way to make the components that we have, that we've invested a lot of time and money into, work together really well, while still offering an opportunity to have some really, high class facilities, and through possible expansion of our pool, and not necessarily, throw a ton of money. I'm not saying that 30 million is a small amount of money, but it's much less than a new build, to be able to continue investing and to do it in a way that's potentially phased so that we can make improvements, as opposed to just like, here it all is and now we wait 50 years to do anything again, but to say we can make these incremental improvements. I think it's just a really strong proposal, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully the community understanding what it is that we're proposing, and those long conversations that we know are coming to refine whatever the concept will end up being.
Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you, through you. Similar to my colleagues, I appreciate being able to see the visuals and walk through the options and the opportunity. And I did have the same question as Councillor Prenger, so I'm glad that was answered. I do have one question about option 3, and then perhaps a quick comment. Just for clarity, I guess, on the layout of option 3, would this then become kind of 2 main doors, one at the back and one at the front, or am I not interpreting the layout properly?
So through you, Chair. So there'd still be the primary entrance, I think, in all the options would be kind of where it is currently. So what option 3 does is just extending that atrium and having the pool space, or the new pool space, at the top. So you'd still have like secondary entrance points or egress points for various reasons that could be used. But I think it also ties into the conversation on site circulation as well, where having an identifiable front door and being able to easily branch off into all the programmatic spaces, but still maintaining the front entrance at the fitness center as well. So you're not forcing everyone to one door, but I think you're just making it more clear and easy to understand where to go, and then internally to the building be able to circulate. So currently we've noted sort of the 2 main entrances being the 2 existing ones, the one at the fitness center and then the primary entrance to the facility at the atrium, and then having those 2 connected, and then option 3 as an additional branch to the pool space.
Sorry, not a follow-up, but thank you, through you. And I think the next part of the presentation will answer this question, but recognizing even the comments that Councillor Blackwell made, that the committee looked at not just the current but the future needs, and my sense of this option, or these options for the Davidson Center, are really to accommodate current demand, and knowing that we're likely to hopefully increase the users that are like the number of users using this space, and I assume that the Tiverton discussion is part of that, like with the growing opportunity, because I'm just thinking like the Davidson Center in isolation, making these changes are great, but I definitely think that we'll see an increase in demand over time, and so I'm assuming that we're looking at these together to kind of accommodate that.
So through you, I would say that like 100%, and looking at both facilities and not wanting to like duplicate program necessarily either, and promote interconnection between the two, but also having them be able to operate independently. And Tiverton itself, just based off of the site and geography, has a lot more space for future expansion. So in looking at future-proofing this building, it's accommodating higher flows of traffic. It's looking at the logistics of building operation. It's looking at where you can add space onto. Like the pool, whether it's a pool or a gym in the future, or like whatever may be. Like you are maxed out on a site plan level with Davidson, and then exactly looking at Tiverton as an opportunity to supplement that future growth potential or incorporate additional programming.
Deputy Mayor, please. And just for future warning, it is another presentation following, so this will be the last question on this one, then we'll move on to Tiverton if we can, please.
Sure. Thank you through your chair. Well, if the objective of producing what you did was to allow us to dream, I think you succeeded like magnificently. I'm just sitting here and I just know that this is going to be discussed in the future, but having lived through Queen Street reconstruction, my mind is really heavily focused on the relative costs and how much the stomach the community has for a major disruption, which looks like ripping the spine out of the Davidson Center and putting something new. So Councillor Stewart threw out a value of 2 years, but I just want, I know Class D estimates are financial, but if you had a Class D estimate for the Davidson Center options in terms of disruption to programming, what without having to be held to it, what would you throw out there? Like, would it be limited to a couple of years?
It's like through you. Is this being recorded? Am I going to be called out on this?
You could just use sign language over here if you want.
It's a really loaded question, and I think it depends on.
But it's really important.
Yeah, I think there are ways to mitigate it. I think the project delivery method itself can have a huge impact versus the actual scope of the project. So if you're doing traditional design bid build, for example, where you design the whole thing, you figure out all the phasing, you spend like a lot of time and money on the consultancy work, and then you bid it out, you get contracts, you hire a contractor, they build it, they give you a bunch of change orders, they all do time delays. That can give you cost certainty to an extent, but also drag things out. I think this could be a great project that would benefit from what's called like an IPD, like integrated project delivery method. The city of Kitchener is currently doing that on a couple of projects, including a rec center as well, where you're bringing the contractor in from day one. You're bringing the municipality in from day one, and then being able to manage a lot of those nuances that would have time impacts. Like how do you keep the building operational? How do you manage site logistics within the budget? So I think if to do atrium pool, probably a couple of years, like at least. If we're talking like construction time, it could be less, it could be more. I think there are a lot of ways to mitigate that. You can spend more time planning, which is always helpful, and having certainty on costs and expectations and budgets, and then look how to execute that most efficiently. But huge grain of salt. Like it's not going to be 6 months, but it's not going to be half a decade. So in between 0 and 10 years, I'd say is my final answer.
And now we'll move to Tiverton and hold the question. We can come back to it. We can come back to it. Tiverton, please.
All right, so next slide. So a much seemingly simpler and smaller building and facility. However, sometimes simplicity can be a double-edged sword. Davidson was very complicated, and figuring out a solution it was relatively finite. Than trying to figure it out to make it work. Tiverton's kind of the opposite, where you have a very simple program currently, and you have a lot of space. And the mandate is, what can Tiverton be? It can be anything, more or less, because you have the space. And it's like, what are the future programming opportunities for the space? What are the community needs for the space? So walking the site, looking at the building, our key takeaways were, a large amount of land, operates mainly as an arena, but is there an opportunity or a drive to be more of a community hub? Can we incorporate ancillary programming like a small library space? And then what programming can we incorporate that sets it apart from Davidson as well? Improve circulation wayfinding, and then accessibility restructuring, and all that kind of stuff. So next slide. Existing site plan. I think we've all been to this, arena in a lot of different municipalities. Very, traditional in terms of its layout and function. Next slide. Existing floor plan, again, from a color coding perspective, what are the support spaces, the community spaces, the circulation spaces, similar to Davidson. The one kind of interesting thing here is that daycare space kind of addition built onto the right. And then it's, primarily an ice rink with your typical change room, concession, support spaces that you would find in a traditional kind of arena of this era. Next slide. So programmatically, how that kind of boxes out. Operating as a single-use facility, highly utilized, but in terms of adaptability and bringing people there, it has currently one function more or less. Looking at how to use Davidson and Tiverton as an opportunity to bring Tiverton and Kincardine together programmatically and sharing some of those spaces and resources. Managing, and this was kind of the challenge of managing what's there. And what's good and what can be used and kind of what can be added to making it better. Not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but at the same time not being overly restrictive, or limiting ourselves based off of the existing architecture. And then the kind of also challenging one is what is the future community needs? What's the anticipated growth rate for for Tiverton and Kincardine? And again, future proofing was the big one here. I think more so than the Davidson Center at Tiverton. Given the space of the land, it's, what one thing can we do fundamentally to really establish a strong, metaphorical design foundation so that in 50 years from now, or 60 years from now, or 75 years from now, a group similar to this isn't, saying the same terrible things that we're saying about Davidson now, because that would make me very upset. So next slide. So we kind of, as architects do, we love drawing, pretty pictures with boxes and hatches and colors, and taking kind of a step back and said, all right, what are the key, first principles? Where are you entering the building and kind of how are you getting around? So this was just a series of sort of axial diagrams of, if you're coming in here, are we organizing things, this way? Is it kind of one building? Is it multiple buildings? Is there an indoor-outdoor? Are things adjacent? Just spitballing high-level, brainstorming ideas of, how this space can start to work. Next slide. Continuing that further, breaking it down into what are, small programmatic elements or areas that require smaller amounts of space. What are the community spaces? What are the rink, ice pad supporting spaces? What are the large program, medium program? And then starting to box those out and looking at those previous diagrams, this kind of really simple idea of, again, a linear space, whether it's a formal atrium or just like a central spine, lends itself really well to expansion and future growth and really clean and simple organization at a really high level, and then being able to anchor rec spaces on one side, community spaces on the other, type of thing. Next slide. So looking at proposed area diagram. And this, came at a lot of back and forth with a handful of different options of, do we go big on the existing facility and do a more holistic renovation or reconfiguration of the space, or do we focus on, a new addition or new scope onto the building? So the proposed area, you can see that the existing rink and primarily circulation and support spaces remain more or less the same, and then the level of intervention is focused on that where the current daycare expansion space was built. So demolishing that current space to kind of rebuild it in a more purposeful way at the right proportions and dimensions. Introducing additional change rooms sort of in that north, south, central spine. And, again, setting up for future expansion into a future space or future opportunity kind of dashed in there, should there be a future need for a different additional large rec center program. The primary focus of this is at that bottom corner where you see like a smaller library, reorganized services, kitchens, and then a community center. So we looked at the Whitney Crawford Center kind of as a benchmark of size to give you a sense of scale. So that's what those lighter kind of squares represent, the proportions of some of those spaces in the Whitney Center. Next slide. So yeah, that area kind of hatches the proposed addition in that pink color. So phase one, existing area, that whole area kind of remains as is. Maybe some mechanical, electrical, accessibility upgrades, but fundamentally not being incorporated too much, and not too much intervention there. Phase two is the proposed addition of that library community space, and then future phase three, might not necessarily phase three per se, but phase two plus whenever, allowing that as over time, whether it's in 5 years or 25 years, setting up that at a really high level, that future expansion growth for any additional program. Next slide. So looking at a site plan level there, again, you can see that the existing rink and support spaces remain more or less the same. Looking at how to rationalize additional parking within the site, and how that new addition of the community center and library space connect into there. So things we looked at here, again, looking at some lessons learned from Davidson is like building access. How are you getting into the building and where are you going within the building? So here we maintain the primary access into the ice rink component, introducing a new public access into that community space, and then sort of a secondary access into that library space. So understanding these spaces might operate and function at different times, depending how you're using the facility. You're not being ushered in through the ice rink, with everybody else to go to a community event in the evening when nothing's happening in the ice rink on the other side of the building. So again, forward at a high level, but setting it up for forward looking into clear wayfinding, establishing a sense of place within the building, and that approach to the building, and you kind of instinctively where you need to go for why you're there. Next slide. So kind of a zoomed in portion at that addition. So threw some tables in there for a sense of scale, but that community center area, sized in a way that it could also double for as like a pickleball court, for example, or additional recreation space. By rebuilding that purposefully, it allows you to increase the height as well. So you have the floor-to-floor heights to promote additional uses outside of just a community space venue, and then sizing the library. We had a lot of discussions on like what is a library, and it's no longer just like books and shelves. It's like maker space, it's gathering space, it's part of a community space. It can be a multitude of things. So, we say library here for, I guess, simplicity of term, but understanding is part of kind of the next phase of this. It's what is the programming of that space, and this exercise is what's a feasible amount of space to allow for that, given the size of the community currently and future looking. So understanding programmatically, that was the hardest part of this part, is what is the program? Kind of now and in the future, and what can we do to really set ourselves up for success there. Next slide. So looking at similar at that AXO in terms of what's being done, kind of hatched in as that future opportunity for a larger rec space. And then again, the level of intervention is more so focused on that community space and library space and central hub. Next slide. The cost estimates on this one was a lot simpler, as it was more straightforward, which you'll see kind of in that Class D, is there's a demo cost of the existing facility, the daycare portion at the right, and then a proposed addition item cost in there as well. So that's there's maybe next slide, just do a quick, just kind of summary over, what we've done. And, I know I speak for the whole team, and this was a really exciting project to work on, and the type of stuff as an architect that is really fun, to kind of be given a really interesting challenge and really focus on how can we create good spaces for good people, and nothing is more iconic for a community than a community center itself. So it was a really great exercise, for us to really kind of figure out how to make it work, and working with Mike and his team and the council has been wonderful. So the big question is, what's the next steps? I think you can jump ahead 2 slides. I won't reread all that. In no specific order necessarily. I think, as kind of my preface, we started at a really high level, and it was echoed by some of the councilors. It's like, what's feasible? Can it even work? Can we connect this to this? Can we do something in this building architecturally, to link the spaces together and to give it another 50, 60, 70 years of life? I think this was a success. The answer was yes, we can. Now, the question is, can you pay for it? Different conversation, but I think we've proved proof of concept that it can work. There is something we can do to make it work, and here's how you would do that. So confirming what that preferred direction is, and that doesn't mean, vote option 1, vote option 2, vote option 3. It's, as a general scope or order of magnitude, what are we going to do next? Like, are we buying into, okay, we need the atrium in the pool? What's the direction forward that we want to do? And quickly follow that is the project phasing. And that goes into that whole conversation of operational. Is the facility operational throughout the entire thing? What are the must-haves? What can be? What is flexible? Are there target timelines to kind of roll these components out, and developing a really understood phasing strategy, which is going to inform the community in terms of disruption, and also inform cost as well, and then also future budgeting. Undertake detailed facility assessments. And I think this goes back to the question of, like, can you actually do that physically? Having a more in-depth structural assessment done, looking at, what's in the concrete, how is it built, looking at mechanical systems, electrical systems. All of those are captured in the estimate, in the cost estimate at a really high level of, if you were doing a new mechanical system for this facility, this many square feet, this type of system, there's Bob's your uncle. Part of this is understanding what's actually there, what's working, what's not working, how can those tie together. From an operational perspective, is there a way to decrease operational costs, improve sustainability? What are those systems we're currently using? What can we use? And then moving on to sort of an advanced functional programming. This ties back to the question on stakeholder engagement from the community. We have taken a program at a high level, taken that feedback, kind of put together what we think works, but then really starting to flush that out as we have this community center space. Like, what does that mean? We have the library space. What does that actual program mean? What does the community need for that space? And how can we accommodate that? Kind of from there, you would, move into a more actual, like, concept or schematic plan. It's feasible. We know it kind of works. What does that mean schematically? Where you actually start to get into the minutia of, service. Are the service spaces the right size? Is there storage spaces the right size? Does this work from a code perspective? What are the challenges there that we need to face, and kind of get really into it in a little more detail. Refining capital costs. I think that's something that's going to go along as part of the whole process. This is where that integrated design, integrated project delivery kind of really works, because you have a lot of control over cost and really start to focus on, what the allowable budget is, and designing to that target, which is a really important concept. There's been so many projects where you hire an architect to design it, and it comes back at, like, 300% what the budget was. And, I don't think that's what we want to do here. I think it's establishing, what is a reasonable budget? How can we design to that? How does phasing tie into that? How does program and then scope sort of the high-level feasibility concepts down into something that can be executed? Part of that is funding opportunities, at provincial and federal levels. And I think through all of this is that community engagement, because it's a community center for the community, and, are we doing what needs to be done, for the community in the right way? And then what's the timeline? That implementation timeline, which kind of factors into a lot of those things as well. Making sure we're doing the due diligence, doing the community and feedback and engagement, looking at the phasing and putting together a plan that actually works, which I think we can do. So that concludes our feasibility study for the Davidson and Tiverton centers.
Thank you. As the Davidson Center had a driver, so does the Tiverton Sports Center, which is the replacement of the Whitney Crawford Community Center. It's had a great life, but it's time to bury that one, sort of, figuratively speaking, and the relocation of the library. And that was, kudos to the team from years ago that started that process and did the community consultations, and Nolan and his team has carried on. So Amanda, go ahead, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. At the risk of sounding biased, because I am the councillor for Ward 3, which is Tiverton and area, Bruce Township, as well as parts of Inver Huron, but at risk of sounding biased, I think that the Tiverton plan is extremely straightforward. Like, it's actually taken away of using our existing infrastructure, since we had that lovely report telling us that our arena had much more life in it than any of us, I think, expected. And then bridging the engineered drawings that we'd had built, like had made to build an actual community center library. So I think it took the best of those plans and merged it with the data we had on the extendability of life on the existing facility. And the other thing that makes me excited about it is we can still have the arena functionality, and the daycare has obviously built that huge extension. So we know that that's no longer a factor, which I think gives us the flexibility there to really move forward with that project without a disruption of service, but extending what it can do for the community and the future community. And I love how the planning allows for that extension as the community grows, assuming the community will grow. So I really appreciated it. So for me, that particular piece of it seems so straightforward that I would feel we'd want to drive on to getting more solid estimates. I'm used to doing a little different. I usually hear class 5 estimate plus or minus 50%, so I'm not as familiar with the letter categorizations, and I will do better. But if this is a class D, I think the next steps would be figuring out where the class C is. But I would ask you what typically next steps we would take at this point.
So through you, I think with Tiverton, like you're correct. It's it's a much simpler plan. By retaining the existing arena in itself, and everything. To your point, you're kind of chopping off where the daycare was, and building onto there. Even from like a systems perspective, like those, like I'm pretty sure it's like 1980s, give or take. They're very simple buildings. Like, they're not complicated mechanically. They serve kind of a function for an ice rink. So managing that disruption is a lot easier. I think specifically with Tiverton, the next step, I think, would really be from a programming perspective. And we had a lot of dialogue in these meetings on like how big, we've kind of landed at let's use this as a reference with the Whitney. But again, as was mentioned, like we're not building from these plans. So if it's like, let's move that wall out like, 5 meters and make the community center a little bit bigger, or, let's make the library or that, makerspace like a little bigger or a little smaller. I think, really figuring out programmatically what those spaces need to be would be like a good first step. And that could probably be done like concurrently with moving into like schematic design, which would be establishing like what are the targets for it, for this development from a sustainability or performance perspective. And then we would look at what are the key building systems, like is this something that you'd want to do in like mass timber, for example. There are like a lot of different conversations at a schematic level that would happen. What's the structural system, mechanical system, based off of that program and that plan, at which point you would, you could even do it with like engineering briefs for something like this, and then you get like a class C estimate, which is a little more plus or minus, and then, kind of move it forward. But you could do it in a pretty linear way.
Out of curiosity, how hard would it be to get a detailed plan together for this so that should additional funding options open up, we'd be able to readily submit? Because this one, because it's straightforward, I feel like we could get it into a ready state.
So we already have one, and to your point, there is funds available in the reserve fund for the Whitney Crawford Community Center, whereby those costs could be picked up and accelerated this year. And the way that the funding for most of the provincial things work is it shovel ready? Is it ready to go? And can you tie it into future growth? And I think we could do either one of those things. So I think the short answer to your question is yes, 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 and yes. So when we pass this motion, if we pass it, like it gives direction to staff to, okay, go do that stuff. Get going on it. So is that okay? Or do you need another response? Are you okay with that? Okay. Councillor Pranger, please.
Thank you, through the chair. Excuse me. Well, I 100% agree with the approach to Tiverton that we want to take. We're going to utilize what's there. It's great. And at the risk of maybe slowing down Councillor Steinhoff-Gray, I have to admit, I'm sorry. I apologize in advance, but I was slightly disappointed with what I saw. And there weren't like renderings, right? Like there was just the layout plan. So forgive me if I can't picture what you intended me to picture, even though I'm quite good at visualizing in my head. Because what I'm seeing is the existing dated entrance remaining with a beautiful addition on it. And I can't, I really am opposed to that concept. I feel like we'd end up with something like the current Davison Center if we take that approach. I'd like to see everything that was proposed to be there, but like you said, perhaps maybe change things a little bit in terms of dimensions or locations, so it's still a single entrance in the front, but a little more of a foyer like the proposed Davison Center. I think Tiverton deserves something like that as well. And I know everything we change and everything else we want to do costs more money, but I'd also hope that council and our communities could think long-term and also take into account the fact that other communities, even our neighboring communities who have done major upgrades to their recreation facilities, have seen major increases in usage and revenue due to that new build. So it brings when you have something like that in your community, it brings not only people directly around you, but also from neighboring communities to come use it. So you actually have a greater increased use than you even expected when you do something really great. So I'd actually like to see, hopefully, Tiverton go that direction a little bit as well, within reason, obviously. But I think part of understanding what needs to happen there and at Davison Center would be your next step number 4, which is your actual planning for future use and really what needs to go where, because we want this use in that location. Because if we change the layout a little bit to what was there, we might have a bit extra space, and what else can we fit in that location? I'm not sure if we need to or not, but I'd like to see it go there. Thanks.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, thank you again for showing us all over again. I agree with my fellow councillor over there. Sorry for pointing, apologies. But, you know, Tiverton's a little different. You know, the thing I really like about this, and we talked about this, is that I was involved with the last community center. We brought it up to shovel ready. We tried to get some grants. We got no grants, and the cost was about $8 to $10 million, and that was just to add a community center. What we decided to do is bring the library and have this community, we call it a community center, but we're going to make it a double story. So it's like a gym. So during the winter, the kids in the, you know, Tiverton, or the adults, can play pickleball, basketball, and everything. We don't have that opportunity in Tiverton right now. The other thing I like, and my fellow councillors already talked about this, is the daycare center is moving into a brand new building. If we get MTO, it'll allow them to hook up. And it basically, this doesn't disrupt the existing place. This is an addition, you know, so we don't really disrupt the rink and what's going on there. This is an addition. I think it could be the heart of the community. I do have to be careful. You can make something really pretty, but at what cost? And I think it's really up to the community in Tiverton and surrounding area to sort of figure out what they want. Do they want a utilitarian building with a lot more offer, or do they want something that is a Taj Mahal that will cost 20, 30% more? So it needs to go to the community now to figure this out. Thank you.
Which continues to be the intent of the motion, where we direct staff to move ahead a little bit and then come back with stuff. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. What I thought I heard from Councillor Pranger was that the vision or the effort put into Tiverton wasn't aiming high enough. So I'm sitting over here thinking about this and about land use planning and future growth. I spent a lot of time lately reading the proposed Bruce County official plan because there's a lot of, you know, attention being paid to the land use designations. And within that, you know, both Kincardine and Tiverton are primary urban communities. And the official plan will talk about building complete communities. I look into the future in here and say, like, I can respect maybe what Saugeen Shores is doing, but from my perspective, someday you'll talk about the twin cities of Port Elgin and Southampton. In where we are right now, we have the town of Kincardine and we have the village of Tiverton. I'd rather end up in the future seeing a slightly bigger town of Kincardine and a town of Tiverton, not a city of Kincardine and a village of Tiverton. I just don't think that we're not, I wouldn't even call it shooting high enough, that if we look at the Bruce County official plan and our official plan, I think that, I think Councillor Prenger's point, essentially, if you use the movie Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come, that I think we're shooting a little low on Tiverton. I often say to Councillor Steinhoff Gray regularly, we get on the subject of Tiverton on a call, and I say, Tiverton needs to grow. And every time I drive through Lucan on the way to London, I see what Tiverton could be. And I'm just, you know, advocating for, and I think you might hear it from the community, that we can't continue to, and I'm not saying we're throwing all our eggs into the Kincardine basket, but it's a structural weakness in our municipality that the highest population density is located in the southwest corner. That is a systematic flaw that I think that land use planning and local government should look to equalize or address over time. Thank you.
Councillor Williams, please.
Thank you through you. I think similar to Councillor Prenger, when I looked at the Tiverton kind of plans, I thought of it as more replacing existing assets and not as much about, you know, supporting expanded use. But I also look at it as the municipality of Kincardine has 2 community hubs. Tiverton users might use Tiverton, they might use Kincardine. Kincardine residents might use, or Kincardine users might use Kincardine, might use Tiverton. Because I've always kind of looked at this project as a great opportunity for us to expand the availability of space for all users. I mean, as a user, I probably go to Tiverton more than I go to Kincardine, and it really depends on the events and activities that our children or our families are doing. And so I really see this as an opportunity for us to look at the 2 assets we have and support the growth of the entire municipality through them, not just the people that live in Tiverton or the people that live in Kincardine, because I think from a user perspective, those boundaries don't necessarily exist.
So I'm going to draw on a local example where we kind of struggled with the vision of the boardwalk, and we kind of agreed on what it was supposed to be made of. And if you go down there, there's something far better, certainly from my perspective, far better than what I ever imagined. Like it just, you know, and I'm gonna suggest that, you know, don't imagine the Whitney Crawford Community Center as the new addition on the southeast corner of the Tiverton Arena. Like just don't put that picture in your head, because that's not what it's gonna look like at all. So no, I'm gonna go to another question. Councillor Kavanaugh had a question, and then I'll come back to you in a minute. So.
Thank you very much, and through the chair, I received a couple of interesting emails from residents advocating, you know, for various things that had to do with this recreational thing. One thing that stood out to me, it's in the agenda later tonight, 8.1 Bravo Alpha, which is the Recreation Park meeting or Recreation Committee meeting minutes from April 7th. And one of the comments was that there was, they do not envision the need for a second ice pad in Tiverton in the near future. And I know that in 2024, the Parks and Rec strategic plan, which was presented by McQueen, Galway and Associates, reached the conclusion that additional ice was not required in the municipality to, you know, meet the current demand and needs. But I just wanted, you know, from our staff to the public at large, is that still the case? I know like there's been ice allocation meetings that have been ongoing over the last couple of weeks and stuff. Are we growing at a point where that has changed, or is that still our core presumption here?
So thank you through the mayor. so that is a lot of the work that still needs to be done now. Like Nolan was talking about, and when we talk about the scaling, we need to look at how much we need to scale on some of those recreational assets, and that will inform the future planning that we're all kind of talking about right now. Currently, those comments were based on that information from the master plan that was done not all that long ago, but it's certainly something that we need to look into as this project progresses. It's not something we just barrel through on right now. For the risk of misstepping on something like that.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you, through you. Yeah, I did want to kind of mention that the Bruce C announcement kind of came at the middle of when we were doing the recreation committee. But part of the conversations that we had all the way through was building blocks and was trying not to close off access to potential expansion. So when you look at the draft, concept for the Tiverton Center, like there's again that kind of central spine that goes two ways, and the idea is, if we were to expand, how are we preparing and creating and leaving opportunities for that, as opposed to closing everything around and then saying, oh hey, maybe we want to do something in the future. So I think, there was a recent conversation in Saugeen Shores about additional ice rinks, and their population is quite a bit bigger than ours, and they're still not at that point yet. So it's something definitely that we want to leave a door open to, and to say, like, our facilities can accommodate growth. But I think, and so we're trying to plan for that going forward when we were looking at the plans. So it's a good thought. And again, I appreciate the work that went into this to say, we're not just building this for today, we're building it for the future. And I think that was also what was the most fun conversation we had, was around what does a library mean? And Nolan was able to show us some examples in Kitchener of, again, a library is a bit more like a coffee shop, or a bit more like the concourse area at the, in the renderings for the Davidson Center. It's more of a gathering space. It's somewhere where maybe there's a mom and talk group that comes. It's maybe a maker space. So again, part of, I think, their planning was, how do those spaces connect the community center and the library? Because eventually, the conceptualization of them as two distinct and completely separate spaces will probably start to ebb and flow.
Councillor Steinhoff, great, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Well, I love all the love for Ward 3 that has been expressed today, and the support for that growing community. The one thing that I would say is that when we originally undertook this, the director at the time, who's now retired, had said that now that we know there's more life that can be breathed into these buildings, we were looking at how we could do an overall facelift. So even though I didn't have renderings, I was imagining something much, much better. Not so I don't want to make it sound like I thought the arena would just stay outdated with something beside. Obviously, I expected some type of facelift, but I do think it's a responsible plan, because there is so much pivot to meet the growing demands. Like, there's a lot of maneuverability in how it's been devised. And you're right, at Tiverton, we have a huge advantage. We own so much land. There's such a huge footprint there that as long as we are very smart in how we posture ourselves, we won't box ourselves in. And we already have a prime example of that, which leads me to a comment that I can't believe I'm about to say. But when I was looking at your plans, and Councillor Stewart was talking about how long can we cause disruptions to the community, I guess my question is, you had an option 4, which was the pool, but if you're going 2 years without a pool, I think the municipality would probably revolt not having a pool. We don't have an outdoor pool. Obviously, we have a very large lake, which is wonderful in and of itself, but I don't see a world where you don't have option 4 as kind of an option 1, so that you can rip out the spine and have separate entrances to all the other locations. So I just, if you could help me understand, because you've done this before, I think we need to be very conscious of how we ensure some people really live for those functions that those buildings have. So disruptions mean something to people personally. And I want to be responsible economically. Like, it's super important because tax rates, we hear it every tax. When you're increasing taxes, that's a huge impact on a huge number of people, not all of them using the same resources. So I understand the importance of that. But I think there has to be a way to balance this because you can't just disrupt use for 2 years. So I'd like to hear on how you've handled that.
Yes, I think it's, we looked at these projects together as, it was one, 2 buildings, but the feasibility in itself is, was done concurrently. And I think the question had come up, it said, was Tiverton, looking at Davidson expansions and kind of sharing program. And, I think that's that next phasing strategy part. Because that's, again, there is land there. So it's, do we want that is the Davidson pool, not saying we should do this necessarily, but grain of salt. Davidson pool, is it worth fixing? Is it too far gone? Is it easier to build a pool in, Tiverton currently off that central spine and turn that into a gym? I think how we put this together, and again, it's not like pick your favorite option and go from there. It's like those, the books where it's like choose your thing and go to page to whatever, and then kind of flip back and we can chart our own path, I think, through this. And I think what we've tried to do through this feasibility is establish the pieces. So Tiverton is, what's the framework? Kind of like you said, to posture ourselves for the future. Where can we allocate future expansion spaces? What those are, when those are, I think those are different conversations. But, have we set ourselves up to do that? I think so, yes. And I think from the design side, and, like I would look at Valley Park in Hamilton and Kitchener Public Library and Peach King, because those are all similar kind of projects, and where you're adding a new library community space onto an existing rec center, and it can be beautiful and permeable and light and really an attractive space and draw people in. The plan looks simple, just a little square there, but through that schematic design, I think architecturally that can really be a symbol and tie in with the existing building. So a long answer to a short question is, I think anything is possible. I think, through this, we've established, again, the pieces of what needs to happen when. So we know at Davidson, to do the atrium, space, we need to do the pool. And we know what that time will be, and we know what that cost will be. To do this, we know the time and cost. To do this at Tiverton, we can figure out the time and cost. It's then, taking a step back at a bigger picture with all the components. It's, what pieces do you move when? And then how do you, channel that out in, the most effective way?
Okay, thank you. We've had a very substantive, high-level view at some vision for the municipality. And we have a motion to make sure that keeps moving ahead a little bit, that we receive the report and direct staff to proceed to the next phase. And it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? And that's carried. Nolan and Joanna, thank you very much for coming and being here with us tonight.
Thank you. Sorry. We're going to head back to Hamilton now, so as much as we'd love to stay.
No.
We'll tune in online and watch it in the road.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we move on. We got a bit. We do have a closed session tonight, so we'll do the bio break in between the open and closed session. So we need a mover and seconder that council direct staff to update the Clean and Clear Yards bylaw based on report number Legislative Services 2026-19 and bring the bylaw back to council for consideration at a future meeting. Moved by councillors Blackwell and Kavanaugh. Is there any discussion about that? Councillor Pranger.
Thank you, through the chair. I actually think this is a great idea. There's some really great aspects to it, including, the allowing naturalized areas and delayed cleaning and mowing in the spring. I encourage my family and friends to do that, so now they won't get in trouble for it if we do this. One recommendation I'd make is maybe improving the proposed definition of ground cover. In the horticultural world, generally, ground cover is understood to be, a living ground cover. When it is.
No, I'm just laughing.
Anyway,
Sorry.
it actually has a very specific definition. If you want to include non-living, either organic or non inorganic covers such as mulch or gravel, respectively, you can do that, but the definition just kind of needs to be better. Well, the definition needs to be better defined, in my opinion. If we could include that in what comes back to council, I'd appreciate it.
Acknowledged. Thank you. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you, through you. This is I'm glad this is coming forward. I know the clerk's been working really hard on this for several months. We first started talking about it, I think, last fall. You know, in many ways, this is just formalizing a lot of the practices we've already been doing, but also really making it clear to the public, you know, the kind of vegetation, the kind of expression and naturalization that we're supportive of and encouraging. One of the feedback elements from the public was about potentially not enforcing elements of the bylaw that we're looking to change now, knowing that there's probably still a couple more weeks until we're able to get, or months depending, until we're able to get a potential bylaw back that adopts these changes if they're supported by council. And I'm just wondering if the clerks may be able to speak a little bit on that.
Can we enforce the intent rather than the bylaw? Yeah, okay.
So I did include in my report the risks of not enforcing it until we have a new bylaw in place. And if we don't, that allows some unmaintained turf grass yards, including those in vacant lots, unmaintained development sites, that could create public health hazards, infestations, and become public nuisances. We do have quite a few vacant lots in the community that, if left to their own devices, could be overrun. So we would want to ensure that the bylaw can continue to work with these property owners to ensure that their properties are safe and maintained and brought into compliance. Requesting that the entire bylaw not be currently enforcing, so brush, overhanging sidewalks, stagnant water. These can lead to health hazards as outlined in the report. As mentioned in the report, bylaw enforcement does work with property owners to understand their property and allow them time to bring it into compliance. They also do have the ability to use their discretion to put the lens of the RUC case on any naturalized yards and ensure that our enforcement falls within the lines of finding these cases. So my recommendation would be that we continue to enforce with that lens put on it, and we move forward with bringing a new revitalized bylaw back to council.
Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you to you, Chair. I approve I support. I don't have the approval authority here. I support the concept. Two concerns, and maybe they're completely unfounded. One of them has to do with the definition of yard. And right now, yard is the entire yard. I don't see a distinction between front yard, rear yard, side yard. And as it exists right now, my concern is that the more ambitious you might get, the more work it is to maintain, even if it's naturalized, and that you could get a runaway situation on that. It may be unfounded. The second would be about enforcement. Manager of Legislative Service brought up vacant lots. There are a number of vacant lots in the community, as she pointed out. A number of them are in the core commercial area of downtown Kincardine. And it seems to be a cyclical thing every year where they get overrun, overgrown, there's debris on them, actions taken, and yet we do get into this cycle year after year after year, but the percentage of time when the property is in a state that's out of compliance is a significant portion of the growing season. So that isn't specific, that comment isn't specific to naturalized yards. That's about enforcement. So, okay. Thank you.
Comment on that.
Through you, Chair. To Deputy Mayor Hinchberger's point, we do have those cyclical problems in those areas. So with the majority of clean and clear yards, what happens right now is an officer does go out and speak to the property owner. They try to educate, work with the property owner. If that fails, they do a notice and they say, you know, we'd like you to fix this up in this amount of time. Here's what it needs so that it's formalized. And then if we still don't see compliance, then we go to an order. And the order can be generally about 2 weeks to come into compliance, or else the municipality does the work and that work then gets put onto their taxes. With these repetitive people that we have seen a pattern year after year after year, those folks go right to order. So they do go right to order and we do it. Again, we try to educate. Again, we try to say, you need to make sure this is kept up to date, but that's the process to sort of speed up what you're looking at.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, being a representative from Ward 2, yards are a little bit funny out there. You know, they're not city yards and everything else. Just wanted to understand this because I guess we're just going to have to, because trying to define this would be very difficult. We're just going to have to be very practical because yards are very strange out there and some of them are just sand. Yeah, you know, and there's different kinds of yards. You got the farmers' yards and everything else. So I guess we just have to be a little bit flexible. And because this is really designed like City of Mississauga for Kincardine and Tiverton and in more residential type areas than what we have out in Ward 2.
I will say that agricultural lands are exempt, so we wouldn't be looking at agricultural lands. And right now, again, our officers, they do work on complaints. So it's, if your neighbor complains about you, that's generally when we're coming out to see you. But the second point is the officers do have, and I want to underline this, discretion. So if they go out and it's a sand lot, that's very different. I also would speak to the issue of yards. There is a definition in the zoning bylaw that we can look at that speaks to rear yard, side yard, backyard, and the definition of those. And I have looked at, do we make some allowances there? So, yeah.
Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. My understanding is that the intended maximum height to put on is 20 centimeters. One of the reasons stated was that to keep it below a certain height so that the grass doesn't go to seed. And that's for turf specifically, by the way, so grass only. That's not your naturalized areas or even ground covers other than grass. I guess from experience, I've seen even recently grass, closer to 10, maybe 15 centimeters already in seed. So I'm not sure exactly where the 20 centimeters came from, or if we need to, oh, it's the current one. I didn't think so. Okay. Anyway, it's just something to consider that 20 centimeters, I don't know if everybody, it's not your normal. It's actually quite a bit. It's quite high. If you're leaving your lawn that high, it actually becomes very difficult to mow it properly because it starts to fall down and then your mower's not going to cut it properly. It's just anyway. So it just becomes a mess. And I do believe that that is tall enough for ticks. So I'm just curious if we want to go lower than that.
So through you, Mayor, a couple of different things. Currently, yes, it is 20 centimeters, and I would think if you looked around the province, the majority of places are 20 centimeters. With the City of Mississauga, after the Ruck case, they did convene a group of experts to look at what turf grass height should be. And so part of that was their recommendation of 20 centimeters, and that's where that came from, was that group of experts. And I can provide that to council, what their report on that looked like and why they're recommending that. So without ourselves going out and spending money and doing our own study, it would be helpful to piggyback on something that a larger municipality's already done. So that's where it came from.
All in favor of the motion? Yep. Anyone opposed? Legislative Services Policy Review. We need a mover and seconder. The council repeal the proclamations policy GG 1.5 and amends the procedure bylaw to add 30.1H council shall not make any proclamations on behalf of any group or entity. And 2, that council repeal the Fish Kincardine Derby Camping in Reunion Park Policy, PD 5.1. Moved by Councillor Stewart, and seconded by Councillor Blackwell. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Were there any notices of motion? So we have the appointment bylaw enforcement officers. We need a mover and seconder that the appointment bylaw enforcement officers, Municipal Support Services, Inc., 2026 bylaw be deemed to be read a first, second, third time. Finally passed and numbered as bylaw 2026-068. Moved by Councillors Kavanaugh and Williams. Any discussion? This just adds to the existing list of municipal support service staff. All in favor? And that's carried. We need a mover and seconder that the following bylaws are hereby read a first, second, third time. Finally passed 10th of June 2026. The Development Charges Amendment Bylaw 2026-069. The Procedural Amendment Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 2026-070. Moved by Councillors Stewart and Kavanaugh. All in favor? Those are carried. Okay, so we're going to do a bio break, and then we're going to do, actually we're going to extend, and then we're going to do the bio break, and then we'll come back for consent and closed.
I'm just looking at these two. Do we, if we could know what we were pulling, then I can maybe set them straight.
Okay, so we'll do the consent agenda. You know the deal. Does anybody want to talk about anything from the consent agenda? Councillor Williams?
Sorry, through 8.1 AD e-scooters. I'd like to pull it for discussion. At a, sorry. I'd like to pull it for discussion at a subsequent meeting. I'd like to be given the opportunity to learn more about what having a bylaw in place might look like in terms of like risks and costs. I do think that although we can choose to do nothing either way, I do think that we owe it to the public to at least talk about it and make a decision whether we choose to have a bylaw or not.
Yeah, regarding e-scooters, yes. Councillor Kavanaugh, please. Oh.
Direct staff to bring that.
Okay, so I bet you'd like to make a motion.
Sure.
Did that come back in? What? What would you like?
I want to be clear about what my direction is.
Okay.
2 weeks or a month? You want a month?
Okay. I'd like,
In a month? Yeah, the,
sure.
what's this? The second meeting in July?
This is the first meeting in June.
Yeah, clerk, please.
There's a big looming, just through you, Chair, there is a very large looming legislative priority in the Clerk's Department right now, and that is the municipal election. So bringing back a clean and clear yards bylaw in the next quarter, bringing back information that will need to be extensively researched on e-scooters. Just it might not be 2 weeks. It might be another month, because that right now our priority is that legislative huge priority of the election. So, and other tasks. But I just want to make sure that I'm not setting council up for an expectation that I can't fulfill.
The clerk will provide that as expeditiously as her department is able.
so do we need anything further? Or?
Just a motion
Okay.
to direct staff to bring a report back to council.
All right, I'll like to make a motion to direct staff to bring a report back to council with options on e-scooter path forward.
Use and operation, sort of,
Yeah, use and operation
within the municipality.
within the municipality.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Blackwell. Are you a seconder? Okay, then discussion, please.
Thank you. Just for the public's awareness, and also for Councillor Williams, there was just a report yesterday at Brockton, much more like all of the research I'm sure that our staff will be bringing forward, very similar. Same with Orangeville. Both have elected to go with the status quo, but I think it would be worth looking at those for some updated background as we're, waiting for our very, very busy staff to bring one forward.
All in favor of the resolution? Okay. Another item, Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. And with the chair's consent, I'd like to pull 8.1 Alpha Alpha and 8.1 Alpha Bravo as they're tied together. It's the Peer Safety Report and the Smart Beach Light from Strategic Initiatives. I just wanted to give staff an opportunity to update council and the public on the status of the priority items within the Peer Safety Report.
Now or future? Just hold that thought a moment.
I'd like to move to extend the automatic hour of adjournment to 8:30.
Seconder for extending the meeting, Councillor Pranger. All in favor? That's carried. Staff, update on Peer Safety Report and the Smart Beach Light initiative.
Thank you, through your mayor. I'm happy to provide a quick update. I know the one that probably everyone is wondering about is the ladders. The ladders are installed, so they're in place on the pier, painted very bright yellow. So if anyone's down there and you have any questions, feel free to reach out on those. The other initiatives that were in place from last year remain, so the signs are in place, life-saving stations are being regularly inspected, and the ladders will now be on that inspection schedule as well. The other key item is the Smart Beach Light. The launch is this Friday. Calibration period is going well. We've had no issues, so we're expecting a seamless launch on Friday.
I was just going to say thank you very much to staff for all their hard work and everything here. This marks a significant milestone for the municipality where we've gone from being reactive to being proactive in managing the safety of our waterfront.
And acknowledge the leadership at the Community Service Department these days too, so thank you. Any other reports from the consent agenda for consideration? Okay, we need a mover and seconder then. The council approve the recommendations contained in the consent agenda dated June 10, 2026 and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. Moved by Steinhoff Gray and Deputy Mayor Hinchberger. All in favor? General announcements, Deputy Mayor.
I have no announcements tonight.
Kavanaugh.
I unfortunately do have one exciting announcement tonight. The 2028 reunion is having their kickoff concert this Saturday night at the Davidson Center. Doors open at 7:30 p.m. and tickets are $30 in advance or $35 at the door. So if you're excited about the reunion coming, we can start the party a few years early.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray.
Thank you. I have no announcements today.
Councillor Williams.
No announcements.
Councillor Monroe, any activities in the community you'd like to make us aware of?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, and yes, I would like to make one announcement and thank the staff. On the 21st of June, the Tiverton Lions will have their Walk of Memory ceremony, but I really want to make an announcement to CAO. Don Houston really went out of his way, and we built a sidewalk that we needed for the last 5 years, and we got it done in 2 weeks. And yes, the Tiverton Lions will be paying for it, but he deserves a little bit of a star because he put that together when we were doing the upgrading the sidewalks in Tiverton and Kincardine. So make sure he gets well recognized. Thank you.
Councillor Pranger, please.
Thank you. The Kincardine Lions recently had their giant yard sale, and I just wanted to thank the community for such a great event, because without them donating their items to be sold, there would be no money to be made. And I believe the entire Kincardine Davidson Center arena floor was full on the first night of drop-off. So it was very successful, and thank you to the whole community for participating.
Councillor Blackwell.
I'll be quick as quick as I can. So there is an upcoming Back to KD event. So if you're thinking of going to the reunion event, or you're just in the you just want to be nostalgic, stop by KDSS on Saturday. Pardon? Yeah, no, KDSS. From 1 till 4, there's going to be lots and lots of fun nostalgic displays, and it'll be a little bit of an opportunity to learn more about the New Build fundraising campaign. Additionally, I did want to recognize that this is Pride Month, and there will be a flag raising on Friday. Unfortunately, I'm not able to make it, but I'm really looking forward to the parade. And lastly, with all of the beautiful weather, not so much today, but we're starting to get there, I have noticed lots and lots of folks out enjoying bicycles, and I know that we have our line painting happening soon, so I'm looking forward to the expansion of our cycling network, and just a reminder to folks to be watching for those folks.
Thank you. As well, to echo Mike's comments regarding the opening ceremonies for the Smart Lights, that's Friday morning at 10 o'clock. And next Monday, the Canadian Federation of University Women is hosting an age-friendly presentation at the Davidson Center. Emily Koosman, who is the Director of Long-Term Care from Bruce County, will be there presenting, and it is recognizing and working towards providing amenities for specific age groups. You know, you can be elderly friendly, you can be youth friendly, or anyone, and you know, it's just highlighting the concerns of our aging population in Kincardine to make sure they have the amenities they need to have great quality of life. So there's the thing. Anything from yourself? Oh, you do.
This evening, on behalf of Strategic Initiatives, June is a month of important recognitions, and this month in particular is National Indigenous History Month, which is a time to honor history, heritage, resilience, and diversity of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. The public is invited to participate in the Saugeen Blanket Workshop on July 21st at 2 p.m. And you can contact the municipal office for more information about that. Further to Councillor Blackwell's points, the flag raising for Pride Month is on June 12th, Friday at 9 a.m. at the Kincardine branch of the Bruce County Public Library, and the Pride Parade is June 20th at 11, with festivities continued afterward in Victoria Park. The municipality will be participating in the parade, and everyone is welcome to join in. June is also Seniors Month in Ontario, celebrating the contributions and achievements of older adults and their important role in our communities. Thank you.
Okay. We need a mover and seconder that council move into closed session pursuant to Section 239 of the Municipal Act as amended for the purpose of considering, 1, the closed session minutes dated May 27, 26. 2, advice that's subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, specifically legal opinion regarding councillor records and Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection something Act, I think. MFIPA. And a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and further the council return to regular open meeting upon completion. Moved by councillors Kavanaugh and Williams. All in favor? That's carried. 5-minute bio break.